The department store smells the way department stores always smelled in that era. A layered, slightly aggressive cocktail of perfume testers, new carpet, and something floral and synthetic that you could never quite name but would recognize instantly if you encountered it again. The lighting is a particular shade of flattering amber warm at the cosmetics counters, engineered to make every woman who stands beneath it look slightly better than she did when she walked in. You're somewhere in the middle of a decade, 1987 perhaps, or 1991. The years blur here because the counters themselves haven't changed much. Glass cases, small elegant jars, names you half recognise from advertisements in magazines you read at the hairdresser. A woman in a white coat, not a doctor's coat but something adjacent to it, something that implies science, implies expertise, slides a jar across the glass toward another woman. The jar is small and heavy and costs more than a week's groceries. She says the word, collagen. She says it the way people say words that carry authority, words that have arrived recently from somewhere credible and are still warm with borrowed prestige. The woman on the other side of the counter nods. She's heard this word. It sounds like something that belongs inside the body, which it does. It sounds like something that is disappearing as she ages, which is also true. It sounds, the woman in the white coat suggests gently, like something that could be replaced. What the jar contains is a cream. What the cream contains is, among other things, a form of collagen derived from bovine hide, processed into something silky and white and faintly scented. What collagen applied to the surface of skin actually does, whether it penetrates, whether it integrates, whether it does anything at all beyond moisturizing the surface like any other well-formulated emollient, is a question that will not be answered definitively for another 30 years, and even then, the answer will be more complicated than the woman in the white coat will ever let on. The jar is purchased. The receipt curls slightly in the warm air. Somewhere in a laboratory, in a Japanese pharmaceutical company, in a regulatory filing, in a peer-reviewed journal that no one in this department store has ever read, a much longer and more complicated story is already in progress. It has been in progress for decades. It will continue for decades more. The lighting hums softly overhead. The carpet absorbs every footstep. Everything here is designed to make you feel that something is possible, something that involves jars and words and the very particular hope that lives at cosmetics counters everywhere in the world. Global collagen supplement sales exceeded $9 billion in 2023. The peer-reviewed literature on whether ingested collagen peptides survive digestion and reach skin tissue intact is, at best, preliminary. At worst, it is largely funded by the companies that manufacture the supplements being studied. This is a story about that gap, the space between what is sold and what is proven, between what the label says and what the science says, between the extraordinary confidence of a $9 billion industry and the considerably quieter confidence of the researchers trying to understand whether any of it works. It is also a story about something older and more persistent than any particular supplement. The human desire to undo what time does to skin, and the equally human willingness to reach for a solution that sounds biological, sounds reasonable, sounds like the kind of thing a doctor might recommend without asking too carefully whether any doctor actually has. The collagen supplement industry did not begin with a discovery. It began with a marketing insight, the realization that a word already familiar from dermatology and medicine could be borrowed, translated and applied to a new category of product in a new country, in circumstances where consumer enthusiasm would comfortably outrun scientific rigor. That country was Japan. The year was somewhere in the late 1970s. The company was a pharmaceutical manufacturer looking for new revenue streams in an aging population that had a cultural and commercial appetite for beauty-adjacent health products. The rest of the story unfolds from there, moving through decades and continents, through regulatory environments and influencer feeds, through beauty magazines and clinical trials, through enthusiastic before and after photographs and carefully worded peer-reviewed caveats. You do not need to take notes. You do not need to remember the names of the compounds or the years of the studies. This is a story meant to be absorbed gently, the way information settles when you are almost asleep, arriving not as a lecture, but as a long, unhurried account of something that has been happening quietly, right next to the loudest aisle of every health food shop you have ever walked through. The narrator already knows how this ends. She is not alarmed. She's simply here, in the particular calm of having read all the footnotes and found them less frightening than the advertising. If you enjoy listening to sleep stories like this, subscribe. I post stories like this weekly. The story begins where all good supplement stories begin. Not in a laboratory, not in a clinic, in a beauty counter in Tokyo, in the years when Japan was reinventing what it meant to be healthy, affluent and aging, and discovering that all three conditions created a market of almost incomprehensible scale. Before the industry existed, before the supplements and the beauty drinks and the powders stirred into morning coffee, there was simply the protein, collagen, the most abundant structural protein in the human body, constituting somewhere between 1/4 and 1/3 of all the protein a human body contains. It is not glamorous in its original context. It is scaffolding. It is the internal architecture that holds everything in approximate position. You can think of collagen as the body's version of the rope, fibrous, tensile, arranged in coils and bundles that give tissue its ability to stretch without snapping and return to shape without staying deformed. It is found in skin, yes, but also in bones, in tendons, in cartilage, in the walls of blood vessels, in the corneas of the eye, in the gut lining, in teeth. Wherever the body needs something that is simultaneously flexible and structural, it reaches for collagen. There are, as of the most recent counts, at least 28 distinct types of collagen. Type 1 is the most abundant and the one most associated with skin. Type 2 appears primarily in cartilage. Type 3 coexists with type 1 in many tissues and is particularly present in the early stages of wound healing, when the body is building quickly and can afford to be approximate. Types 4 and 5 and 7 have their own specific roles in specific tissues and become relevant mainly in the study of particular diseases or particular cosmetic claims. What most people mean when they say collagen, in the context of a supplement tin or a beauty product, is type 1, the fibrous structural protein that lives in the dermis, the layer of skin beneath the visible surface. The dermis is where collagen fibers are arrayed in a loose three-dimensional mesh. Young skin has dense, tightly organized fibers. Older skin has fibers that have become less organized, thinner, more widely spaced, with more gaps between them. The visible result of this is what the cosmetics industry calls a reduction in firmness, and what the rest of us call getting older. Collagen in skin is produced by cells called fibroblasts. These cells are the body's original manufacturing infrastructure for the dermis. They synthesize not only collagen, but also elastin, the protein responsible for skin's ability to snap back after being stretched, and the various components of what is called the extracellular matrix, the gel-like substance in which the collagen fibers float. Fibroblasts are busy, specialized, and relatively long-lived, but they are not immune to time. From roughly the age of 25, the human body's production of collagen begins to decline. The decline is gradual at first, perhaps 1% per year, and then accelerates around menopause in people with ovaries, when the drop in estrogen causes a more precipitous loss. By the time a person reaches their 50s, they may have lost 30% or more of the collagen density in their skin compared to their early 20s. This is not a disease, it is biology. It is what aging skin looks like from the inside. The question that the supplement industry is built on, and it is genuinely a reasonable question, even if the industry's answers are not always reliable, is whether you can reverse or slow this process by consuming collagen from outside. Whether eating it, drinking it, or stirring it into your smoothie can in some way prompt your own fibroblasts to produce more of what they used to produce in abundance. The answer, as answers to reasonable questions so often are, is complicated, and the complication begins almost immediately, at the level of digestion, before any collagen molecule has had the chance to encounter a single fibroblast. When you swallow a protein, any protein, your digestive system's primary job is to break it down into its constituent amino acids. This is not a failure of the digestive system. It is exactly what the digestive system is supposed to do. Proteins arriving in the stomach are denatured by acid, then cleaved into smaller fragments by enzymes called proteases, then broken down further in the small intestine, until what remains are individual amino acids or very small peptide chains of 2 or 3 amino acids ready for absorption into the bloodstream. Collagen, as a protein, is subject to the same process. It is largely broken down before it is absorbed. What reaches the bloodstream is not intact collagen. It cannot be, because the gut has no interest in allowing large intact proteins to pass through its lining. What reaches the bloodstream are amino acids, primarily glycine, proline, and hydroxyproline, the three amino acids that together constitute the majority of collagen's structure, and that together give collagen its distinctive triple helix shape. These amino acids are useful, the body can use them. Glycine, for instance, is conditionally essential, meaning the body produces some of it but may not always produce enough, particularly under conditions of stress or heavy physical demand. Consuming glycine from dietary sources, whether those sources are collagen supplements or gelatin or bone broth, or simply foods that contain collagen-rich connective tissue, does replenish the body's supply. But, and this is the crucial but that tends to appear in small print, in the methodology sections of studies, in the careful hedging of responsible scientists who are asked about this on podcasts. Replenishing the body's supply of glycine and proline does not automatically instruct fibroblasts to produce more collagen. The body uses amino acids for a large number of purposes. It will allocate them where it calculates they are most needed, according to processes that are considerably more complex than a simple input-output equation. This is the foundational uncertainty that the collagen supplement industry has spent 4 decades working around. It does not mean that collagen supplements cannot work. Some trials suggest they can, under certain conditions with certain forms of collagen, measured by certain methods, over certain periods of time. But it does mean that the confident, simple story, eat collagen, grow collagen, is not what the science says. What the science says is quieter, hedged, preliminary, and considerably less useful in an advertising context. The industry, as we will see, has found ways to be comfortable with this situation. It is a comfort built on careful language, on the particular ambiguity of terms like may support and helps promote, and clinically studied, on the distance between what a trial shows and what a marketing claim implies, and on the simple, durable, entirely human desire to believe that what we swallow can become what we want to be. The scaffolding of the body goes on doing its quiet work regardless of what we do or do not consume. The fibroblasts go on producing what they produce, in declining amounts, with declining efficiency, as they always have. And somewhere in a warehouse in California or a factory in France or a processing plant in China, collagen is being extracted from bovine hides or fish scales or chicken sternums, hydrolyzed into peptides, dried into powder, poured into canisters, and shipped to the aisle where everything begins. To understand why the supplement industry found such fertile ground in the word collagen, it helps to understand how deeply embedded that word had already become in the medical and cosmetic consciousness by the time the first supplement tins arrived on health food shelves. Collagen had been a cosmetic and dermatological concept for decades before it became a supplement. It had its own history, its own body of research, its own moment of cultural arrival. Injected collagen became a cosmetic procedure in the early 1980s. The FDA approved bovine collagen for soft tissue augmentation in 1981, and for the following decade, injectable collagen was the primary non-surgical cosmetic procedure available to women who wanted to address wrinkles and facial hollowing. The collagen used, Zyderm and Zyplast, produced by Collagen Corporation, was bovine in origin, purified and formulated for injection, and required an allergy test before use because a small percentage of patients reacted to the animal-derived protein. The injectable collagen era was brief. It was largely displaced by hyaluronic acid fillers in the late 1990s and early 2000s, which lasted longer, required no allergy testing, and could be dissolved if the result was unsatisfactory. But its significance for the supplement story is that it established collagen as a cosmetic ingredient in the popular consciousness in a way that was medical, credible, and linked directly to real biological function. If injected collagen filled wrinkles, and it demonstrably did if temporarily, then surely collagen, as a concept, was something the skin needed, something that was genuinely lost with aging, something the medical establishment was already treating. This was the cultural inheritance that the supplement industry acquired. They did not have to explain what collagen was or why it mattered. They simply had to reframe the delivery system, from needle to powder, from clinic to kitchen, from procedure to daily habit, and position their product within the credibility that injectable collagen had already established. The timing was additionally fortunate in another respect. The mid-1990s saw the first consumer exposure to a new language of skincare science, the language of active ingredients, penetrating formulas, cellular renewal, collagen synthesis. This language was developed by cosmeceutical brands like Kinarus, Neostrata, and the early iterations of brands that would become SkinCeuticals, companies that were attempting to occupy the space between medicine and cosmetics, and that presented their products in the vocabulary of biochemistry rather than the vocabulary of traditional beauty. In this environment, collagen as a supplement ingredient landed in a market that had been primed to understand and appreciate scientific-sounding skincare claims. The consumer who in 1985 might have bought a cream because it smelled nice or had a beautiful package was by 1995 increasingly likely to buy a product because of what the label said was inside it and why the science said that mattered. The move from topical collagen to oral collagen was a natural extension of this trajectory, the ingredient moving as skincare science always seeks to move deeper into the body. There is something almost elegantly recursive about this history. Collagen is a protein the body makes. The body makes less of it as it ages. The cosmetics industry first sold it back to people in jars that could not penetrate the skin. The pharmaceutical industry began injecting it directly into the dermis. The supplement industry began selling it as something to swallow, on the theory that the gut would process it and the blood would carry it, and the fibroblast would use it. Each iteration of the delivery system came with new confidence that this, finally, was the mechanism that would work. Each iteration also came with a similar structure of evidence: early, plausible, largely industry-funded studies suggesting benefit, followed by rigorous independent work that produced a more complicated picture, followed by the industry absorbing the complication and continuing as before. Injectable collagen produced a real cosmetic effect but lasted only 3 to 6 months. Topical collagen moisturizes but does not penetrate. Oral collagen peptides may have some effect on hydration and possibly on elasticity in some populations over certain periods. Each form of the ingredient has been slightly more biologically credible than the last, and each has been sold with the same absolute confidence. The absolute confidence is not, in most cases, cynically adopted. The people who make these products and sell them often genuinely believe in them. The founders of supplement companies have typically tried their own products and experienced what they describe as genuine benefit. The researchers who conduct industry-funded trials often genuinely believe they are investigating something real. The influencers who incorporate collagen into their morning routines often sincerely enjoy the ritual and sincerely believe it is working. Sincere belief and accurate belief are not the same thing, but they produce similar behavior, and the experience of believing something is working can produce real effects through mechanisms that are poorly understood but no less real for that. The skin is a subjective organ. How it looks depends on light, hydration, sleep, stress, mood, the mirror you're using, and the story you've told yourself about what you expect to see. A person who begins a supplement regimen with the sincere belief that it will improve their skin, who pays careful daily attention to their skin as a result, who sleeps better because the ritual signals a positive self-care intention, who perhaps also drinks more water because they are paying more attention to their body generally, may well experience an improvement in how their skin looks. Whether the collagen in the supplement is responsible for that improvement is a different question from whether the improvement is real. This is the deeply human dimension of the supplement story, the dimension that the clinical trials, with their before and after photographs and their cotometer measurements and their Visier complexion analysis images, cannot fully capture. The story a person tells themselves about what they're doing and why it is working is part of what makes it work. The ritual matters, the intention matters. The small daily investment in one's own body, however humble the ingredient, matters in ways that are difficult to quantify and easy to dismiss, and important not to dismiss entirely. The $9 billion is not spent only on a powder. It is spent on a story. The story of taking care of yourself in a specific way, of having a morning ritual that is about your own long-term well-being, of doing something that feels intelligent and evidence-adjacent and self-loving. Some of the money is spent on genuine biological effect. Some is spent on hope. The proportion is unclear and probably varies by person and by product. All of it is spent on something real. The scaffolding of the body holds the body up. The scaffolding of the story holds the habit together. The science, when it eventually arrives in its careful, hedged, qualified form, will tell us which parts of both are genuinely load-bearing. Japan in the late 1970s was a country that had developed, over centuries, a particular cultural relationship with the concept of beauty as something one consumed as much as applied. The tradition of beauty foods, foods believed to improve the complexion, clarify the skin, strengthen hair and nails, was old and deeply embedded, predating by centuries the pharmaceutical industry that would eventually give it a new vocabulary. What was new was money. Post-war economic growth had created a consumer class with disposable income, educated tastes, and a willingness to spend on products that existed at the intersection of health and appearance. The Japanese functional food industry, a category that scarcely existed in Europe or North America at this time, was already experimenting with what it called bifunctional foods, products that served a nutritional purpose and a health-adjacent purpose simultaneously. Fermented foods with probiotic properties, drinks containing plant extracts believed to support circulation, foods fortified with components that had a pharmaceutical rationale, however loosely defined. The regulatory environment in Japan was different from what existed in the United States or Europe. The boundaries between food, supplement, and quasi-medicine were more permeable, and the category of health food occupied a large and enthusiastic middle ground. Into this environment, in the late 1970s and early 1980s, came the first commercial collagen products. They were not supplements in the Western sense, capsules or powders consumed separately from food. They were functional foods, collagen-enriched drinks, collagen-containing noodles, collagen jelly. The idea was that collagen, consumed as part of a meal or a drink, might improve the appearance of skin, reduce the visible signs of aging, maintain what the marketing materials called Hydrolysis. The Japanese aesthetic concepts of skin that has tension, luminosity, and a kind of smooth resilience that is simultaneously textural and visual. The companies that developed these products were not primarily cosmetics companies. Many were pharmaceutical manufacturers or food companies with research and development arms looking for new markets. The move into beauty-adjacent nutrition was strategic. Aging populations with strong beauty cultures and high purchasing power represented exactly the kind of consumer base that could sustain a premium product category over decades. What distinguished the Japanese collagen products from what had come before, from the simple beauty creams and tonics that had always existed, was the claim to a biological mechanism. Collagen was not presented as a traditional remedy or a folk ingredient. It was presented as a modern, science-informed nutritional intervention. The very specificity of the ingredient, this particular protein, this particular structural component of skin, gave it a credibility that vaguer beauty ingredients could not claim. You were not consuming something that merely might help. You were consuming the actual substance your skin needed. This framing was, from a marketing perspective, ingenious. It borrowed the authority of medicine and biology while remaining in the far less regulated territory of food. It gave consumers a rational story, a causal chain from consumption to result that felt scientific, even in the absence of the peer-reviewed evidence that science actually requires, and it worked in a market that was already culturally primed to accept the idea that eating the right things could change the appearance of your skin. The early Japanese collagen products were not, it should be said, entirely without scientific basis. The amino acid profile of collagen, rich in glycine, proline, and hydroxyproline, is genuinely unusual among dietary proteins, and the biological significance of these amino acids in collagen synthesis was already known. What was not yet established was whether consuming collagen specifically, as opposed to any other protein rich in these amino acids, had a measurable effect on skin that was meaningfully different from simply eating enough protein generally. This question, and it is the central question of the entire industry, was not aggressively pursued in the early years. There was not a large appetite among companies whose revenues depended on the answer being yes, for funding studies that might produce an ambiguous answer. The science that was done in these years was exploratory, small-scale, often conducted by researchers with financial ties to the companies commissioning the work. This is not a conspiracy. It is simply how early-stage product development tends to proceed, in beauty as in other industries. The rigorous independent science would come later, in some cases much later, and its findings would be more complicated than the marketing had prepared anyone to expect. By the mid-1980s, the Japanese collagen market had grown substantially. Collagen had become a recognizable ingredient, a category shorthand, a word that appeared on packaging with increasing confidence. The beauty drink format, small bottles of collagen-containing liquid, sold chilled, consumed daily, had become a genuine phenomenon in convenience stores and pharmacies. These drinks were consumed by women in their 30s and 40s primarily, the demographic most aware of the changes that were beginning to occur in their skin and most culturally receptive to the idea that those changes could be intervened upon. The products were expensive relative to other beverages, but not ruinous. The habit was sustainable, and the habit, crucially, was pleasurable, small, daily, self-caring, associated with the kind of mindful attention to one's own body that the culture endorsed. Whether or not the collagen in the drink was doing anything to the dermis, the ritual of consuming it was doing something. This is not nothing. Placebo effects in skin are measurable and real. The psychological component of feeling that you're taking care of yourself has documented effects on things like stress, sleep quality, and the inflammatory processes that genuinely do affect skin appearance. The beauty drink category established in Japan in the 1980s would eventually migrate westward, but not immediately and not directly. Before collagen went global, it underwent a transformation, from functional food to concentrated supplement, from something you drank with breakfast to something you measured into powder and stirred into water, from a category embedded in Japanese food culture to a category positioned as nutritional intervention for international consumers who had been trained by a different set of cultural stories about what supplements were and what they could do. That transformation required intermediaries. It required companies willing to take the ingredient out of its original context and reframe it for new markets. It required a regulatory environment that would permit the claims needed to sell it. And it required eventually a change in the media landscape, from beauty magazines and pharmacy advertising to something considerably faster, considerably louder, and considerably less interested in the methodology sections of scientific papers. But that comes later. For now, the year is approximately 1985. A woman in Tokyo is drinking a small bottle of something that contains 10 grams of hydrolyzed collagen peptides and tastes faintly of citrus. She's been doing this every morning for 6 months. She believes with some confidence that her skin looks better. The fibroblasts in her dermis are doing what fibroblasts do. The science that would tell us whether those two facts are related will not exist for another decade, and when it arrives, it will hedge in ways that no marketing department will find useful. The bottle is small and elegant. The refrigerator in the convenience store glows cool and blue. The morning is already noisy with the sounds of a city that has decided beauty is something you can eat for breakfast. The problem of digestion, the objection that any protein swallowed will simply be broken down before it reaches the tissue it is supposed to help, was understood by the industry early. It was the obvious objection. Any scientist, any nutritionist, anyone with a basic understanding of how the gut works would raise it. The industry's answer was not to dismiss the concern. The industry's answer was a process. Hydrolysis is the chemical breakdown of a substance using water. In the context of collagen, hydrolysis involves treating whole collagen, extracted from animal connective tissue, typically bovine hide, fish skin, or chicken cartilage, with specific enzymes or acids that break the long collagen fibers apart into smaller fragments called peptides. These peptide fragments are shorter chains of amino acids, typically between 2 and 12 amino acids in length, small enough to potentially be absorbed through the gut wall more readily than the intact protein would be. The resulting product, hydrolyzed collagen, or collagen hydrolysate, or collagen peptides, terms that are used interchangeably, is a pale powder, nearly tasteless, soluble in both hot and cold liquids, and with an amino acid profile still characteristic of collagen, high in glycine, proline, and hydroxyproline. It can be measured into a dose. It can be put into a tin with a label. It can be given a clinical appearance and a specific gram weight and a daily serving size, which gives it the formal grammar of a supplement rather than a food. The hydrolysis process genuinely does change what happens in digestion. Hydrolyzed collagen is absorbed faster and more completely than non-hydrolyzed collagen. Studies using isotopic labeling, techniques that allow researchers to tag specific molecules and track them through the body, have shown that dipeptides and tripeptides derived from collagen, particularly the hydroxyproline-containing peptides specific to collagen, and not found in significant quantities in other dietary proteins, do appear in the bloodstream after ingestion of hydrolyzed collagen. This finding is one of the more solid pieces of evidence in the collagen supplement literature, and it matters. It means that something specific to collagen, something that is not simply generic amino acids, does make it into circulation. The question that the literature then spends the rest of its time grappling with, is what those peptides do once they are in the bloodstream. The proposed mechanism is this. The collagen-derived peptides, particularly hydroxyproline-containing dipeptides, act as signaling molecules. They interact with fibroblasts in the skin and in other collagen-rich tissues. They are recognized, or so the hypothesis goes, as fragments of damaged collagen, and this recognition triggers a repair response, stimulating the fibroblast to produce more collagen as though responding to injury. This mechanism is biologically plausible. The body does use fragment signaling in wound healing and tissue maintenance in other contexts. Fibroblasts do respond to specific molecular signals. The hypothesis that collagen-derived peptides could serve as such signals is not, on its face, implausible. The gap between biologically plausible and demonstrably true is where much of the controversy lives. In vitro studies, experiments conducted on cells in laboratory conditions, have shown that collagen peptides can stimulate fibroblast activity and increase collagen production in these controlled environments. These studies are real, and their findings are reproducible. They are also, as anyone who works in drug or supplement development will tell you, extremely poor predictors of what will happen inside an actual human body, where cells exist not in isolation but in an enormously complex system of competing signals, regulatory feedback loops, competing demands, and tissue-specific contexts that no petri dish can replicate. The progression from in vitro evidence to human clinical evidence is where the collagen supplement literature becomes genuinely complicated. Some human trials have been conducted. The best of them are double-blind, placebo-controlled, peer-reviewed, and published in dermatology or nutrition journals. The worst of them are funded by the supplement companies themselves, conducted on small samples of participants, measured using subjective self-assessment scales, and published in journals that have limited peer review processes and a strong commercial interest in maintaining relationships with industry advertisers. The fact that some trials appear in the first category and many appear in the second is not a surprise. It is sadly a characteristic of the supplement industry globally, a function of the regulatory environment, the funding landscape, and the economic incentives that shape which research gets conducted and which research gets published. Independent funding for supplement research is scarce. Academic researchers who study nutrition and dermatology have large, urgent, underfunded questions to pursue. The companies that manufacture collagen supplements have both the money and the motivation to fund studies of their own products, and they use that funding accordingly. A systematic review published in 2019 in the Journal of Drugs in Dermatology, the kind of paper that collects all the available trials and assesses them together, found that the majority of the human trials showing positive effects on skin from collagen supplementation were industry-funded, conducted on small samples typically between 30 and 60 participants, and of short duration, typically 8 to 12 weeks. The review concluded that while the evidence was broadly consistent in showing some benefit, the quality of the evidence was insufficient to make strong conclusions, and that independent, large-scale, long-term trials were needed. Those large-scale independent trials remain sparse. The reasons are partly financial and partly structural. Supplement companies are not required, as pharmaceutical companies are, to prove efficacy before bringing a product to market. The regulatory burden is dramatically lower, and because they do not need to prove their product works before selling it, the commercial incentive to fund rigorous independent research is considerably reduced. Why spend money that might produce uncomfortable answers when the current ambiguity is commercially adequate? This is the situation the hydrolysis process was born into, and it is the situation it operates within today. Hydrolyzed collagen peptides are, by the standards of the supplement industry, a relatively well-studied ingredient. There is more clinical evidence for them than for many other things sold on similar shelves. But more than very little is not the same as convincing, and convincing is not the same as conclusive, and conclusive is precisely what the marketing materials suggest the evidence is. The powder goes into the canister. The canister gets a label. The label says clinically studied. Somewhere in a research institute, a scientist is filling out a grant application for an independent trial that will take 5 years to complete and will reach conclusions that the supplement industry will spend the next 5 years finding ways to contextualize. The hydrolysis process runs through the night in the processing plant. The powder falls into neat piles, the morning shift arrives and the canisters are sealed, and the particular gap between what the process achieves and what the label claims is packaged inside them, invisible and resolute, headed for a shelf near you. The idea that what you eat shapes how you look is not an idea the supplement industry invented. It is ancient. It appears in traditional Chinese medicine, in Ayurvedic practice, in the European humoral tradition, in folk remedies from every culture that has ever given thought to why some people's skin glows and others does not. The specific ingredients have changed. The vocabulary has evolved from humours to vitamins to peptides. The underlying impulse, to find the edible key to radiant skin, has not changed at all. The modern Western history of beauty nutrition begins, approximately, with the patent medicine era of the late 19th century, when the regulatory vacuum in the United States allowed entrepreneurs to sell essentially anything in a bottle with a health claim on the label. The patent medicines of this era were a mixture of the harmful, the inert, and the accidentally useful. Opium compounds that relieved symptoms by the direct pharmacological action of the opium, herbal preparations that did nothing, and vitamin-adjacent tonics that occasionally addressed genuine nutritional deficiencies in populations with limited dietary variety. What the patent medicine era established, for the purposes of the story that follows, is a commercial template, an authoritative-sounding ingredient, a compelling theory of action, a testimonial from someone who experienced benefit, and a distribution system reaching consumers who had a genuine health concern and limited access to medical expertise that might have evaluated the claim critically. The template is older than the patent medicines, but the patent medicine era scaled it into a mass-market phenomenon, and the regulatory response that eventually came, the Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906, the Federal Food, Drug and Cosmetic Act of 1938, created the regulatory environment that defined what could and could not be claimed about consumable products for the next century. The supplement industry that emerged from the 1970s health food movement was partly a reaction to the increasing medical authority of conventional pharmaceuticals, and partly a continuation of the older tradition of self-medication through natural products. The natural designation carried considerable cultural weight in this period. It implied purity, safety, alignment with how the body was supposed to work, as opposed to the synthetic, the pharmaceutical, the clinical. Natural was not a regulated term in supplement marketing, but it functioned as one, creating an implied standard of safety and authenticity that was commercially powerful and scientifically meaningless. Vitamins had their own arc through this history. The discovery of vitamins in the early 20th century, each discovery the result of elegant experiments connecting specific nutritional deficiencies to specific diseases, created a template for the entire supplement industry. A specific molecule, a specific biological function, a specific deficiency syndrome, and therefore a specific benefit to be obtained from consuming the molecule in supplemental form. The template worked beautifully for genuine deficiency conditions. It was then applied, less successfully but with equal enthusiasm, to the idea that consuming more of a beneficial molecule would produce proportionally more of its benefit even in people who were already adequate. Linus Pauling's advocacy for megadose vitamin C in the 1970s is the paradigmatic case. Pauling, a two-time Nobel laureate whose authority on molecular biology was genuine, and whose authority on vitamin supplementation was borrowed from that genuine authority, argued that very high doses of vitamin C could prevent and treat a range of conditions from the common cold to cancer. His books sold millions of copies. Vitamin C supplementation became a mass behavior. Subsequent research, some of it very rigorous, failed to confirm his most dramatic claims while supporting more modest benefits. The collagen story is not Pauling's story. It is less dramatic and involves less scientific authority misapplied to a new domain. But the structure is similar, a genuine biological function of the molecule, extended into claims about supplementation that the biology cannot quite support. The specific history of dietary supplements as a cultural phenomenon in the United States in the 1980s and 1990s, the year in which the collagen supplement category was gestating, in which the Japanese market was developing, in which the regulatory framework was being actively contested, is characterized by an unusual tension between consumer enthusiasm and scientific skepticism, between genuine nutritional research and aggressive commercial exploitation of that research, between the legitimate findings of micronutrient science and the application of those findings to conditions and populations they had never been studied in. The sports nutrition category that preceded the beauty supplement category in terms of popular awareness offers a parallel and instructive example. Protein supplementation for athletic performance and muscle building had been a commercial category since at least the 1960s, when gym culture and bodybuilding culture created a consumer base willing to consume powders and drinks in pursuit of aesthetic and performance goals. The evidence for protein supplementation in resistance training athletes, that consuming adequate protein, including protein in excess of what ordinary food might conveniently supply, supports muscle protein synthesis and recovery from exercise, is genuinely solid and has been replicated extensively. The sports nutrition industry built a multi-billion-dollar category on this real evidence base. What the sports nutrition industry then did, and what the beauty supplement industry has replicated with somewhat different ingredients, was extend the evidence from the specific context in which it was established to the general population with much less scientific rigor. The evidence that protein supplementation supports muscle gain in strength athletes does not automatically translate to evidence that protein supplementation in sedentary adults who are already protein adequate produces similar benefits. The evidence that whey protein is particularly effective for post-exercise muscle protein synthesis does not automatically mean that whey protein is the optimal protein source for all purposes in all populations. These extrapolations were commercially useful and scientifically imprecise, and the supplement industry made them reliably. The beauty supplement category arrived into this established commercial and cultural context, a consumer base already accustomed to supplementation, already comfortable with the idea of consuming specific molecules for specific health outcomes, already familiar with the grammar of the supplement label and the vocabulary of clinically studied and supported by research. Collagen, when it arrived on Western shelves, did not have to establish the category of beauty supplements. It arrived into a category that existed and had an audience and needed only a new flagship ingredient. The history of eating for beauty is, in the end, the history of hope organized by commerce. The hopes are real. The commerce is real. The gap between what is hoped and what is demonstrated runs through all of it, in every era, under every ingredient name, dressed in the language of whatever science sounds most credible in the moment. The patent medicine bottle, the vitamin pill, the collagen canister, the NAD plus capsule, the form changes. The hope is continuous. The distance between the label and the laboratory has been, throughout this history, more or less constant, which is perhaps the most significant fact of all. Collagen as a food ingredient was not new to Western cultures. It had simply not been called collagen. For centuries, the byproducts of meat production, bones, skin, hooves, tendons, cartilage, had been simmered into stocks, rendered into gelatin, and consumed as ordinary parts of the diet in ways that delivered significant quantities of collagen-derived amino acids without anyone framing this as a nutritional intervention. French cuisine built an entire technical vocabulary around the properties that bones and connective tissue imparted to sauces, the body, the gloss, the mouthfeel that a proper stock achieved after long, slow extraction. Gelatin, which is essentially partially hydrolyzed collagen, produced by cooking collagen-rich materials in hot water for extended periods, was a food of considerable cultural significance throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries. It was aspirational, associated with the elaborate aspic and case presentations of Victorian and Edwardian entertaining. It was medicinal, given to convalescents and children as a digestible protein source. It was practical, used to set jellies and puddings, and to stabilize preparations that might otherwise collapse. The collagen content of a traditional diet heavy in slow-cooked meats, bone-containing cuts, and meat-based stocks was, by the estimates of food scientists who have examined historical dietary patterns, considerably higher than the collagen content of a modern Western diet centered on boneless, skinless processed meat products. Whether this historical higher intake of collagen-adjacent nutrition had any measurable effect on skin appearance in populations that consumed it is a question that cannot be answered, because no one was measuring skin collagen density in Victorian households. But the question is at least worth asking. What brought collagen as a category to Western supplement markets was not nostalgia for traditional dietary patterns. It was, more prosaically, the success of the Japanese functional food model, filtered through a European and American supplement industry that had been transformed, beginning in the 1990s, by a deregulatory wave that expanded the definition of what could be sold as a nutritional supplement and loosened the standards for what could be claimed on a label. In the United States, the passage of the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act in 1994 was a watershed moment for the supplement industry. The act dramatically reduced the regulatory burden on supplement manufacturers, removing the requirement that manufacturers prove their products were safe and effective before bringing them to market. Under the new framework, the burden of proof shifted. The FDA would have to demonstrate that a supplement was unsafe in order to remove it from market, rather than manufacturers having to demonstrate it was safe to put it there. The Act also created new latitude for health claims on labels, permitting statements about how a product might affect the structure or function of the body without requiring the level of evidence that drug claims require. This regulatory environment was, for the collagen supplement industry, enormously enabling. A product could be labelled as supporting skin health, promoting collagen synthesis, or contributing to skin elasticity without providing clinical trial evidence sufficient to support a pharmaceutical claim. The language of supporting and promoting and contributing is not identical to the language of treats or cures, and the distinction is legally significant even when it is commercially invisible. Consumers reading that a product supports collagen synthesis tend to understand this as an evidence-based factual claim, not as a regulatory maneuver. European regulations were somewhat stricter, requiring that health claims on food and supplement products be approved by the European Food Safety Authority before use. The EFSA review process has, over the years, rejected a significant number of collagen-related health claims on the grounds that the evidence submitted was insufficient to establish a causal link between collagen supplementation and the claimed effect. This has meant that collagen supplement marketing in the European Union has had to be more careful in its language, suggesting benefits without claiming them directly, using imagery and emotional framing where explicit claims are not permitted. The collagen supplement category arrived in Western health food shops and pharmacies gradually through the late 1990s and early 2000s. The early products were largely unremarkable in their packaging, clinical-looking, aimed at an audience interested in joint health as much as skin health, marketed to active people and aging people rather than to beauty consumers specifically. The collagen in these products was predominantly bovine, sourced from the hides of cattle as a byproduct of the meat industry, and the form was typically hydrolysate in relatively large amounts, 10 grams or more per serving, consumed in water or juice. The market was real but modest. The growth that would eventually push the category past $9 billion annually had not yet arrived. That growth would require two ingredients that the early supplement market did not yet have: a compelling delivery format and a media distribution system capable of reaching consumers at the scale needed to sustain a billion-dollar category. Both would arrive in the 2000s, and they would arrive together, in a way that no marketing department planned but every marketing department retrospectively claimed to have predicted. The delivery format was beauty collagen, collagen specifically positioned not as a health supplement but as a beauty product, consumed for skin and hair and nails specifically, in formats that were pleasing and portable and Instagram-friendly. Small sachets, flavoured powders, beauty waters, collagen coffee creamers. The supplement moved from the pharmacy to the kitchen, from the athletic nutrition section to the beauty shelf, and in doing so, it changed its audience. The media distribution system was influencer marketing, which is a phrase that sounds modern and technical, but describes something quite ancient: the endorsement of a product by someone whose opinion the consumer trusts, in a context that feels personal rather than commercial. What was new was the scale, the cost efficiency, and the particular parasocial intimacy that social media created between a person with followers and the people who followed them. But before we reach the influencers and the beauty powders and the morning routine videos watched by 40 million people, we need to spend some time in a smaller room, a room with fluorescent lighting and stacked journals, and a researcher who has just received a grant to study something that the industry has been claiming for 20 years, and no one has yet proved to the standard that science requires. The laboratory is quiet in the late afternoon. The centrifuge hums its low, monotonous note. Outside, the world is spending money on collagen. Inside, someone is very slowly, very carefully, trying to find out if that money is well spent. The results, when they come, will be nuanced. They always are. The supplement industry that produces collagen powder did not arrive fully formed. It was built deliberately through decades of political advocacy that reshaped the regulatory environment in ways that created the commercial space the industry now occupies. Understanding this regulatory history is not necessary for understanding the science of collagen. It is necessary for understanding why the science and the marketing have been allowed to diverge as far as they have. Before 1994, dietary supplements in the United States were regulated under the same framework as food additives, and, where health claims were made, under the pharmaceutical framework. A company that wanted to sell a supplement with a health claim, that it prevented or treated a disease, would need to demonstrate safety and efficacy to the FDA before bringing it to market. This framework was similar to the pharmaceutical approval process, and it had the same practical consequence. It was expensive, it was slow, and it prevented the rapid introduction of new products that the emerging supplement industry wanted to bring to market. The supplement industry responded by spending the 1980s and early 1990s building a political coalition to change the regulatory framework. The campaign was sophisticated and effective. It mobilized consumer groups who had been persuaded that supplement regulation was an attack on health freedom, the right of individuals to take what they believed would support their own health without government interference. It recruited health food store owners who represented hundreds of congressional districts. It funded lobbying operations of considerable scale, and it eventually produced the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act of 1994, signed by President Clinton, which fundamentally restructured the regulatory relationship between the supplement industry and the federal government. The DSHEA, as it is known, did several things. It defined dietary supplements as a category distinct from food additives and drugs, subject to a lower regulatory burden than either. It reversed the burden of proof on safety, requiring the FDA to demonstrate that a supplement was unsafe to remove it from market, rather than requiring manufacturers to demonstrate it was safe before market entry. It permitted structure-function claims, statements about how a supplement affects the structure or function of the body, without pre-market review, as long as the manufacturer had substantiation on file and the claim was accompanied by a disclaimer that the statement had not been evaluated by the FDA. The structure-function claim category is the regulatory space in which virtually all collagen supplement marketing operates, supports skin collagen synthesis, promotes skin elasticity, helps maintain joint cartilage. These are structure-function claims. They require substantiation, but the standard for substantiation is competent and reliable scientific evidence, a phrase that is not defined in the statute and is therefore interpreted by manufacturers and regulators in different ways. The supplement manufacturer's legal team tends to interpret this standard as requiring less than the independent scientist's methodology section would require. The FDA disclaimer. This statement has not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease, is required on all supplement products making structure-function claims. It is present on virtually every collagen supplement sold in the United States. It is printed in a font size and a location that renders it functionally invisible. Studies of consumer understanding of supplement labels have consistently found that a substantial proportion of supplement users do not know that supplement claims are not reviewed by the FDA before products reach market, and that the disclaimer, when noticed, is frequently interpreted as a routine legal formality rather than a meaningful statement about the evidence. The DSHEA's consequences for the supplement market were dramatic and immediate. The industry grew from approximately $4 billion in 1994 to approximately $20 billion by 2000, a five-fold increase in 6 years. The growth was driven partly by new product categories that the regulatory change made commercially viable, and partly by the investment that established supplement companies could now make in marketing, freed from the cost and uncertainty of a pre-market approval process. The collagen supplement category arrived into this regulatory environment in its modern form, as an ingredient with a structure-function claim about skin or joints, after the DSHEA framework was already well established. The companies selling collagen supplements in the 2000s and 2010s were operating in an environment that required them to have substantiation on file for their claims, but not to submit that substantiation for review, not to conduct trials of a specific size or duration or design, and not to publish the results of trials that were unfavourable. The regulatory floor was low enough that the building of a $9 billion category could proceed with a level of scientific rigour that would not have been adequate in a pharmaceutical context. The FTC enforces advertising standards for supplement marketing separately from the FDA's labelling authority, and the FTC's standard for advertising claims, substantiated by competent and reliable scientific evidence, is in principle higher than the label standard. In practice, FTC enforcement is limited by the same resource constraints that limit FDA enforcement, a large and rapidly evolving market producing far more claims than the agency can practically review. The FTC has taken action against supplement companies with particularly egregious claims, companies claiming to cure diseases, to produce effects that are clearly impossible, to use clinical language about treatments that are not clinical, but the ordinary collagen supplement operating within the soft boundary of skin health and structure function language is rarely the subject of enforcement. The European regulatory environment, as previously noted, requires health claims to be pre-approved by EFSA. The EFSA review process has been generally sceptical of collagen health claims, declining to approve specific claims about skin hydration, skin elasticity, and joint health, on grounds that the evidence submitted was insufficient to establish a causal relationship between supplement intake and the claimed effect. This regulatory environment has not prevented the sale of collagen supplements in Europe. It has prevented the specific verbal claims that European supplement marketers would like to make, redirecting the marketing energy toward imagery, testimonial, and the creative ambiguity of product names that imply benefit without stating it. The regulatory divergence between the United States and Europe reflects a broader philosophical difference about where the burden of proof should sit in consumer product safety and efficacy. The American approach places the burden on the regulator to demonstrate harm or unsubstantiated claims after a product reaches market. The European approach places a greater burden on the manufacturer to demonstrate safety and, for health claims, efficacy before making those claims. Neither system is perfect. The European system can slow access to genuinely beneficial innovations. The American system permits a great deal of commercially successful unproven product, but the consequences for the information environment are significant. The American supplement consumer operates in an information environment that the regulatory framework has, by design, made difficult to navigate accurately. The products on the shelf have been through no independent review. The claims on the labels have been evaluated only by the manufacturer's legal team. The scientific advisory board, whose names appear on the website, has been paid to be there. The influencer who held up the product in the morning routine video was, directly or indirectly, compensated. None of this is illegal. All of it is disclosed in some form somewhere. The disclosure is just not the part that the marketing is designed to make you read. The law that made this possible was written in 1994 and has not been substantially revised. Proposals to require mandatory registration of supplement products, to require adverse event reporting, to tighten the substantiation standard, have circulated in Congress periodically without achieving the political momentum to pass. The supplement industry's political infrastructure, built over decades of advocacy and reinforced by a consumer base that tends to vote for health freedom, remains effective enough to prevent the regulatory revision that the FDA and independent nutritional scientists have periodically called for. The regulation sits where it was placed 30 years ago. The market has grown around it like a forest around an old fence. The fence is still there. The forest has made it hard to see. The clinical evidence for collagen supplementation and skin exists. This is the honest starting point. It is not a category devoid of research, and dismissing it entirely as pseudoscience would be, itself, a form of inaccuracy. But the evidence that exists has specific characteristics, in terms of funding, sample size, methodology, and measurement, that significantly affect how much confidence it warrants. Understanding those characteristics is not a technical exercise. It is simply learning to read the map that the research has drawn, rather than the map that the marketing materials have drawn in its place. The most widely cited trials in the collagen supplement literature share several features. They are typically short, lasting between 4 and 24 weeks. They are typically small, enrolling between 30 and 120 participants. They almost always measure outcomes using a combination of instrumented skin analysis, techniques that use ultrasound or optical coherence tomography to measure skin thickness and density, and self-report questionnaires in which participants describe their own perception of their skin's appearance and feel. The instrumented measurements are the more reliable of the two. A machine measuring the echogenicity of the dermis, a proxy for collagen density, does not know what treatment the participant is receiving and has no capacity to believe in the product. It simply measures what it finds. The self-report questionnaires are more complicated because participants who believe they are receiving an active treatment and who want that treatment to work, as most people who enroll in skin supplement trials do, tend to report improvements even when the instrumented measurements do not support them. This is not dishonesty. It is the placebo effect, which is real, measurable, and well documented in dermatology. A properly designed trial addresses this by using a placebo control group, a group of participants who receive an identical-looking, identical-tasting product containing no active collagen, and by keeping participants unaware of which group they are in. This design, called a double-blind placebo-controlled trial, is the standard for pharmaceutical research and the standard to which supplement research, when it aspires to be taken seriously, tries to hold itself. Several published trials of hydrolyzed collagen peptides have used this design, and their results are broadly consistent in showing a statistically significant effect on at least some skin parameters, typically skin hydration, skin elasticity as measured by photometry, or the appearance of fine lines when measured by a skin analysis device, compared to placebo. The effect sizes are generally modest, typically a 5 to 15% improvement over control, and the clinical meaningfulness of these improvements, whether they represent a visible change that a person looking at their face in a mirror would actually notice, is a question the trials typically do not answer directly. The skin hydration findings are the most robust and the least surprising. Collagen peptides are hygroscopic, they attract and retain water, and the glycine in collagen is used in the synthesis of hyaluronic acid, a compound known for its water-retaining properties in skin. The mechanism by which collagen supplementation might increase skin hydration is plausible and relatively direct, and the finding has been replicated across multiple trials by different research groups. If collagen supplements reliably do anything to skin, improving hydration is the thing they most reliably seem to do. The skin elasticity findings are more interesting and more contested. Skin elasticity is a measure of how quickly skin returns to its original position after being stretched or pinched, what the cosmetics industry calls bounce or firmness. The trials that have measured elasticity have generally found improvements in the collagen group compared to placebo, though the magnitude varies and the mechanism is less clearly established than for hydration. The collagen density findings, the measurements that would most directly address the question of whether supplementation is increasing collagen production in the dermis, are the most methodologically demanding and the least consistent. Some trials using ultrasound have found increases in dermal echogenicity suggesting increased collagen density. Others have found no significant difference. The variation may reflect differences in participant age and baseline skin quality, differences in the collagen product used, differences in the imaging protocols employed, or genuine biological variability that makes this outcome hard to measure reliably in small samples over short periods. Perhaps most significant is a meta-analysis, a study of studies, published in 2021 in the International Journal of Dermatology, which pooled data from 19 trials and found a significant improvement in skin hydration and elasticity in participants receiving collagen supplementation compared to placebo, but noted that the vast majority of trials included in the analysis had been funded by collagen supplement manufacturers, and that the risk of publication bias, the tendency for positive results to be published while negative or null results remain unpublished, was high. Publication bias is a structural problem in supplement research, and it operates like this. A company funds 10 small trials of their product. 7 produce positive results. 3 produce null or mixed results. The company publishes the 7 positive trials and declines to publish the 3 others, citing various practical reasons. Systematic reviewers who later try to assess the evidence will find 7 positive trials and assume this represents the bulk of the research conducted. It does not. It represents the bulk of the research that was published. The 3 null results are sitting in a drawer somewhere, uncounted. This is not illegal. In the supplement industry, it is standard operating procedure. Pharmaceutical companies are required by law in many jurisdictions to register clinical trials before they begin and to publish results regardless of outcome. Supplement manufacturers face no such requirement. The consequence for the evidence base is significant and well understood by researchers, even when it is invisible to consumers. There is one finding in the collagen supplement literature that is, if the studies reporting it are taken at face value, genuinely striking. Several trials have reported that collagen supplementation appears to increase not only collagen density in the dermis, but also fibroblast density, that is, the number of fibroblast cells present per unit area of tissue. If true, this would suggest that collagen supplementation is not merely providing raw material for the body to use, but actively stimulating the regeneration of the cells responsible for collagen production. This would be a significant, even remarkable finding. The trials reporting this finding are small, industry-funded, and not yet replicated by independent researchers. The measurement technique used, confocal reflectance microscopy, is highly sensitive and subject to interpretation. The finding is plausible within the signaling hypothesis discussed earlier, but plausible is not confirmed, and this distinction matters enormously when billions of dollars in annual sales rest partly on the implied promise that the finding represents. The honest summary of the clinical evidence, as it stands at the time of this telling, is something like this. Hydrolyzed collagen peptides, consumed regularly at doses of 5 to 10 grams per day for at least 8 weeks, probably improve skin hydration and possibly improve skin elasticity in ways that are measurable with sensitive instruments, though whether these improvements are visible to the person whose skin they are occurring in is less certain. Whether they increase collagen density in the dermis is unclear. Whether they stimulate fibroblast activity is even less clear. The trials that show the most dramatic results are almost all funded by the companies whose products are being tested. This is what the research says when you read all of it, including the methodology sections and the conflict of interest disclosures and the limitations paragraphs that appear at the end of every paper and are almost never quoted in any press release. The laboratory lights flicker off at the end of the day. The data sits in its files, carefully gathered, carefully qualified, carefully honest about what it cannot yet say. In the morning, a marketing team in a bright open-plan office will look at the same data and produce a different document entirely. The collagen supplement story does not exist in isolation. It sits within a broader category of oral beauty nutrition that has expanded enormously over the past decade to include probiotics for skin, hyaluronic acid for skin, ceramides for skin, antioxidant blends for skin, and the catch-all category of beauty from within. The idea that what you consume determines what your skin becomes in ways that go well beyond simply eating adequate nutrition. This broader oral beauty category draws, with varying degrees of accuracy, on a body of research that has genuinely illuminated some connections between gut health and skin appearance. The gut-skin axis is a real area of scientific inquiry, documenting bidirectional relationships between the state of the gut microbiome, the permeability of the gut lining, systemic inflammation, and the appearance of skin conditions including acne, rosacea, eczema, and psoriasis. The connections are genuine but complex. Studies have found, for example, that people with acne have a different gut microbiome composition on average than people without acne. People with rosacea have a higher prevalence of gut conditions like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. People with inflammatory skin conditions often show elevated markers of gut permeability, the phenomenon sometimes called leaky gut, suggesting that the integrity of the gut lining may affect systemic inflammation that in turn manifests in the skin. These associations are interesting and represent a genuine scientific development in the understanding of skin health. What they do not do is establish that any specific supplement will improve skin appearance in otherwise healthy people by acting on the gut-skin axis. The step from observation of association in people with specific conditions to recommendation of supplementation in the general population is a step that the oral beauty supplement industry tends to take enthusiastically and the scientific literature tends to take cautiously. Collagen supplement marketing has borrowed selectively from the gut-skin axis research to position collagen as benefiting skin not only through the direct peptide to fibroblast mechanism, but also through gut health support. Collagen is rich in glycine, which is a precursor to glutathione, the body's primary antioxidant. Glycine also plays a role in supporting the tight junction proteins that maintain the integrity of the gut lining. Consuming additional glycine through collagen supplementation might, in theory, support gut barrier function, which might in turn reduce systemic inflammation, which might in turn benefit skin. The chain of might in the previous sentence is doing a great deal of work. Each link is individually plausible. The chain as a whole is not established by any trial that has directly studied the pathway from collagen supplementation to gut lining integrity to reduced inflammation to improved skin appearance. It is a story constructed from mechanistic plausibility, not from clinical evidence of the complete pathway. This is characteristic of the way supplement marketing uses science, not falsely, because each component of the mechanism is individually documented somewhere in the literature, but selectively and synthetically, assembling a path from known facts that has itself never been demonstrated. The result is a claim that sounds like it is summarizing research when it is actually constructing an argument from components of research that were never combined in the way the claim suggests. The probiotic skin supplement market has developed in parallel with the collagen market and operates with a similar relationship to its evidence base. The most widely marketed probiotic strains for skin health, certain Lactobacillus and Bifidobacterium species, have been studied in trials for specific skin conditions, particularly acne and eczema, with results that are generally positive but involve small samples, short durations, and high risk of industry influence. The evidence for their effect on skin appearance in people without these specific conditions is essentially absent. What the oral beauty nutrition category has done, taken together, is create the impression of a well-developed science of eating for skin, a science in which specific ingredients can be targeted to specific skin outcomes, in which the gut is understood as an organ that processes beauty, in which what goes into the mouth shapes what appears on the face. Some of this impression is accurate, much of it is, at the current state of evidence, premature. The accuracy that does exist tends to concentrate at the level of nutritional adequacy, the finding that significant nutritional deficiencies produce measurable effects on skin, that correcting those deficiencies reverses those effects, and that a diet adequate in protein, essential fatty acids, vitamins and minerals supports skin health. These findings are robust, well replicated, and largely not what the supplement industry is selling, because they can be achieved through ordinary food and do not require a premium supplement. The supplement industry is selling something additional, the promise that optimizing beyond adequacy, supplementing above what food can reasonably provide, targeting specific pathways with specific ingredients, will produce specific improvements in specific skin parameters. This promise is not yet well supported by the evidence, though it is not impossible that future research will support parts of it for specific ingredients and specific populations. In the meantime, the oral beauty nutrition market is growing at approximately the same rate as the collagen market. For the same reasons, compelling mechanism, emotionally resonant story, media distribution through trusted voices, and a consumer culture that is simultaneously increasingly scientifically literate and increasingly willing to act on preliminary evidence when the risk is low and the hope is high. The gut and the skin are indeed in conversation. The language they speak is one of the most interesting research questions in contemporary dermatology. The supplement industry has decided not to wait for the translation to be completed before releasing the merchandise. The morning light on the kitchen counter includes, alongside the collagen canister, a packet of probiotics and a bottle of something antioxidant-rich, and a capsule or two of something else entirely. The ritual accumulates. The shelf fills. The story expands to fill the space available to it. There is a document that exists in many forms, in many drawers, in many marketing departments in the supplement and beauty industries. It is sometimes called a dossier, and sometimes a claims file, and sometimes simply the evidence, and its purpose is to assemble the research that supports what the product's label and advertising says, in a form that can be shown to a regulatory body if asked, while remaining useful to a copywriter who needs compelling language for an Instagram caption. The assembly of this document is a specific skill practiced by specific people who occupy a specific niche between science and commerce. They are not scientists, though they may have scientific training. They are not marketers, though they work closely with marketing teams. They are interpreters, people who read the literature and understand how to select, frame, and present studies in ways that support the claims the company wants to make. without making statements that are technically false and therefore legally actionable. The techniques they use are not secret. They are simply the inverse of the techniques taught in evidence-based medicine, a discipline that has, over decades, developed sophisticated tools for identifying when the presentation of evidence is misleading, even when no individual fact has been falsified. The first technique is selection, a dossier that supports a claim that collagen supplementation improves skin hydration will include the trials that found this effect and omit or minimize the trials that did not. It will not falsify the latter. It simply will not include them, or will mention them in passing with a note that they used a different product, or dose, or measurement method. The cumulative effect is a document that presents the evidence as considerably more consistent than the full literature actually is. The second technique is framing, a study that found a statistically significant but clinically modest improvement, say, a 7% increase in skin elasticity, as measured by a catometer in a group of 43 women aged 35 to 55, can be described as clinically proven improvement in skin elasticity in a way that is not technically false, but implies a confidence and generalizability that the data does not support. The 43 women become women. The 7% becomes improvement. The catometer measurement becomes what you see in the mirror. The transformation is incremental, each step small enough to seem reasonable, the cumulative effect significant enough to constitute something different from what the science found. The third technique is the use of surrogate endpoints. Dermal collagen density is difficult to measure non-invasively and expensive to measure at all. Skin hydration is easy to measure and responds quickly to a wide range of interventions, including simply drinking more water. A trial that shows improvement in skin hydration is a real trial with real findings. Presenting that trial as evidence that the product improves skin is not false, but skin is doing a great deal of work in that sentence. It is implying, without saying, that the improvement is meaningful, visible, lasting, and related to the mechanism the label describes. The fourth technique is the cultivation of a scientific advisory board, a group of dermatologists, nutritionists, or other credentialed researchers whose names appear on the company's website and who have agreed, in exchange for consulting fees, speaking opportunities, or research funding to be associated with the brand. The existence of a scientific advisory board implies institutional legitimacy. It suggests that the product has been reviewed by experts, that the evidence has been evaluated, that the claims are credible. The advisory board members may or may not have actually reviewed the evidence in detail. Their names are on the website either way. None of this, to be entirely clear, is unique to the collagen supplement industry. It is standard practice across the supplement category and across significant parts of the conventional food and beverage industry as well. The techniques were not invented by collagen companies. They were inherited from a much longer tradition of nutritional marketing that extends back well into the 20th century, to the fortified foods of the post-war era, to the dietary supplement explosion of the 1970s, to the omega-3 boom and the probiotic boom, and every other period in which an ingredient with partial scientific support was scaled into a mass-market category by a combination of plausible mechanism and enthusiastic promotion. What makes the collagen moment interesting is the scale at which these techniques are currently operating, and the new distribution channel through which they reach consumers. For most of the supplement industry's history, the primary vehicle for this kind of evidence presentation was the print media, magazines, newspapers, health publications, mediated by at least some editorial layer that, however imperfect and however compromised by advertising relationships, provided a minimal check on the most egregious claims. What replaced that mediating layer is something with no editorial function at all. A registered dietitian with 200,000 Instagram followers who describes their morning collagen routine while a product sits prominently in the background, hashtagged and tagged, is performing a kind of endorsement that is simultaneously personal and commercial, simultaneously authoritative, because she has credentials, and unmediated by any review of the evidence behind the specific product she is holding. Her followers do not know whether she has read the literature. Her credibility implies that she has. The distinction between these two states is invisible on a phone screen. The Federal Trade Commission in the United States and equivalents in other jurisdictions have developed guidelines for the disclosure of commercial relationships in social media content, and many jurisdictions now require hashtags like ad or sponsored or gifted when content is paid for. but the enforcement of these guidelines is inconsistent. The penalties for non-compliance are modest, and the creative ingenuity of the industry in finding ways to create content that is commercially motivated without appearing to be so remains considerable. A company that pays a content creator to mention their product is required to disclose that relationship. A company that simply sends a creator free product and hopes they will mention it, without any formal arrangement, occupies a regulatory grey area. A company whose chief executive has become a public figure in her own right, and who mentions her own products in the context of personal lifestyle content, is arguably not advertising at all. She's simply living in public. The dossier in the drawer and the Instagram post on the screen are products of the same impulse. The impulse to present a story about a product that is compelling enough to sustain purchase at scale, while remaining within the technical boundaries of what is permissible to say. The story they tell is one in which the science is settled, the mechanism is proven, the results are visible, and the product is worth every penny. It is a story that the literature read in full does not quite support. But the literature is long, and the dossier is short, and the Instagram post is shorter still, and most people who are deciding whether to add a canister of collagen powder to their grocery order will encounter only the shortest version. The laboratory and the caption are very far apart. The distance between them is measured in billions. The $9 billion is spent by people. It is useful to remember this, to come down from the scale of the industry, from the processing plants and the regulatory filings and the clinical trial registries, to the kitchen counter on an ordinary morning where an ordinary woman is opening the canister because she bought it, and she's going to try it, and she has reasons for this that are as complicated and human as reasons for anything always are. She might be 34. She might have noticed for the first time that the skin under her eyes behaves differently than it used to. Not dramatically, not alarming her, but differently. Slightly less quick to spring back when she smiles. A quality of fine texture that was not there at 27. She's been reading things online. She has a friend whose skin looks good and who mentioned in passing that she takes collagen. The supplement cost $45 for a month's supply, which is not nothing, but which is less than a facial and rather less anxiety-inducing than a consultation about injections she's not sure she wants to consider. She buys it. She stirs it into her morning coffee for 3 weeks before she notices anything, and what she notices is difficult to attribute. Her skin might be more hydrated. Her friend asked if she was sleeping better. She feels, in a general way, that she is doing something, that the canister on the counter is a physical reminder of an intention she has toward herself, the intention to pay attention, to invest, to not simply let time do what time does without doing anything at all. This experience is real. The sense of doing something positive is real, whether it is the collagen peptides or the additional attention, or the friend's comment or the slightly better sleep that has been happening coincidentally, is not something she has any means to determine. Nor probably does it matter to her in the way it would matter in a clinical trial. She's not a data point. She's a person trying to navigate her body and her time with the information available to her. She might be 51. She might have been taking collagen for 2 years, part of a broader supplement routine that includes magnesium for sleep and vitamin D, because she lives somewhere with limited winter light and omega-3, because her doctor mentioned it. The collagen is the newest addition and the one she feels most uncertain about. She has read a Guardian article saying the evidence is weak. She has read a wellness newsletter saying that was written by someone who did not understand the new research. She is educated and she works in a demanding professional environment, and she does not have time to read the methodology sections of clinical trials, and she is not sure she would understand them if she did. She continues taking it because she has been taking it for long enough that stopping would feel like a decision rather than a default, and she's not sure the decision is worth the energy. The $40 a month is affordable. The ritual is pleasant. If asked whether she thinks it is working, she would say she thinks her skin is a bit better than it was, but she cannot be sure because she is also sleeping more consistently, and she changed her moisturizer around the same time she started the collagen. This uncertainty, this layered, imprecise, practically reasonable uncertainty, is the actual lived experience of most people who supplement. They are not naive. They are not being deceived in a way they would describe as deception. They are making approximate decisions in conditions of genuine information complexity, with limited time and limited scientific literacy, and a supplement industry that has invested heavily in making its products feel credible and has invested rather less in making the evidence for them accurately communicated. She might be 66 and taking it for her knees. She walks every morning, has walked every morning for 20 years, and the knees that were fine for the first 15 years have, in the last 5, developed a particular opinion about hills and cold weather. Her doctor has said the X-rays show early osteoarthritis. Her doctor has not recommended collagen supplements, but her doctor also has not recommended against them, and a colleague whose opinion she respects began taking them 6 months ago and says her knees are better. She's aware that anecdote is not evidence. She's also 66 and her knees hurt and she would like them to hurt less. The supplement costs $30 a month. The mechanism makes biological sense to her, even if she cannot evaluate whether the mechanism has been validated. If it works, if her knees feel better in 3 months, she will keep taking it. If it does not, she will stop. This is a reasonable approach to a supplement with no meaningful safety concerns and uncertain efficacy. It is what most doctors would advise if asked, which she has not quite got around to asking. These 3 women are not representative. No one is representative, but they share something that the clinical trial population shares. They are genuinely trying to navigate aging with limited information and reasonable hope, and the supplement industry has made itself available to that navigation in ways that are more immediately accessible than the scientific literature. The supplement industry also knows these women. It has conducted research on them. Not clinical research, but market research. The kind that identifies the specific anxieties and decision moments and media habits and price sensitivities that characterize the most commercially valuable segments of the beauty supplement consumer. It has used this research to refine its products, its packaging, its marketing vocabulary, its influencer selection, its retail placement, its subscription pricing models that reduce the cost of customer acquisition by turning the one-time purchase into an automatic monthly relationship. The relationship between the consumer and the supplement is not between equals. The supplement company knows considerably more about the consumer than the consumer knows about the supplement. This asymmetry is not unique to the supplement industry. It characterizes most consumer markets. But it is particularly significant in health-related markets, where the information asymmetry interacts with genuine health concerns and genuine vulnerability to produce decision-making conditions that are not fully autonomous. The well-informed consumer, the consumer this story is trying to help create, is a partial corrective to this asymmetry. She knows what the trials show and who funded them. She knows what the label means and what it implies. She makes her decision from a more equal position than she started in. Whether she buys the supplement or not is, having read this far, genuinely her decision. That is the outcome the story was designed to produce. The woman at the kitchen counter stirs her powder into her coffee. Whatever she's decided it with more information than she had before. The morning is ordinary and specific and entirely hers. Before the collagen powder came the bone broth, and before the bone broth as a supplement category, there was simply the broth, the long-simmered stock that lived at the base of good cooking in almost every food culture in the world, and that had been made, more or less unchanged, for as long as humans had had fire and pots, and the practical wisdom to know that the things left over after a meal could be turned into the beginning of the next one. The bone broth movement, and it became, briefly and somewhat improbably, a movement, with dedicated storefronts and delivery services and the particular earnestness that attaches to food-based health practices when they position themselves against mainstream medicine, emerged in roughly 2013 and peaked in the period between 2015 and 2018. It was associated with the paleo diet community, which had developed, from the early 2000s onward, an elaborate and not always internally consistent set of claims about what humans evolved to eat and what modern diets were missing. The ancestral argument for bone broth went like this. For most of human history, animals were consumed whole, or nearly whole. The collagen-rich parts, the joints, the tendons, the skin, the marrow-containing bones, were not discarded but consumed, either directly or after being rendered into broths and stews. The modern Western diet, which centers on boneless, skinless processed muscle meat, has stripped away these collagen-containing components, leaving a population nutritionally depleted in glycine and proline, and the other amino acids that connective tissue provides. Bone broth was not a new supplement. It was a restoration of what had always been eaten, before convenience and industrial processing separated the profitable meat from the structural components that surrounded it. This argument has some validity at the level of amino acid nutrition. The modern Western diet probably does provide less glycine and proline than a diet that includes significant amounts of connective tissue and organ meat. Whether this deficit has any measurable effect on health or appearance is a different question, but the premise is not invented. It is grounded in real differences in dietary composition between traditional and modern food cultures. What the bone broth movement added to this reasonable nutritional observation was a set of health claims that went considerably beyond what the evidence supported. Bone broth was credited with healing leaky gut, reducing inflammation, improving joint health, reversing signs of aging, supporting immunity, improving sleep, enhancing athletic performance, and generally constituting a kind of whole-body tonic that had been lost in the transition to modern eating and could now conveniently be restored for $15 a jar or $30 a box of packets. The collagen content of bone broth became a central claim in this marketing. Studies were cited, usually selectively, usually at the level of individual blog posts rather than systematic review, supporting the role of collagen in joint health and skin health. The broth was presented as naturally rich in type 2 collagen for joints, type 1 collagen for skin, and various growth factors and minerals and glycosaminoglycans that were described in terms optimized for evocative resonance rather than biochemical accuracy. The reality of the collagen content of bone broth is somewhat more complicated. The collagen content of homemade broth varies enormously, depending on the bones used, the duration of simmering, the temperature, and the ratio of bones to water. Commercial bone broths vary even more, and the claims on their labels about collagen content are not always supported by independent laboratory analysis. A 2017 analysis published in Food and Nutrition Research found that the protein content of commercial bone broths varied considerably, and that the specific amino acid profiles did not always reflect the collagen-rich composition that was implied. The bone broth moment is relevant to the collagen supplement story for several reasons. It normalized the idea of consuming collagen deliberately, as a health practice, in the mainstream wellness culture. It created a consumer base that was already familiar with the ingredient, already convinced of its potential, and already accustomed to paying a premium for it. When the collagen supplement industry scaled up in the late 2000s, it was reaching an audience that bone broth had already warmed up in both senses of the word. It also established the ancestral framing that collagen marketing continues to deploy. The idea that supplement use is not a new, untested intervention, but a restoration of what was always natural, always traditional, always eaten before modernity took it away. This framing is rhetorically powerful because it inverts the usual burden of proof. Instead of asking whether the supplement does something new, it asks why we stopped doing something old. The science required to answer that question is different, and the emotional appeal is stronger. The bone broth moment also revealed something about the particular dynamics of wellness marketing in the social media era. That an ingredient could scale from niche to mainstream not through advertising but through narrative. The story of bone broth, ancient wisdom, traditional healing, the return to what humans evolved to eat, was told by bloggers and podcasters and food writers with large, trusted audiences who were often not paid to tell it, but who found in it something that aligned with their own values and their own relationship with food and health. The story spread because it was a good story, because it offered a simple solution to a complex set of anxieties about modern eating, and because it tasted, when made well, genuinely good. The collagen supplement industry would eventually package a cleaner, more portable, more durable version of the same story. The narrative would evolve from ancestral broth to modern peptides, from kitchen tradition to clinical science, from the simmer of a slow pot to the measure of a precisely formulated dose. But the underlying emotional structure would remain the same. The body needs this. Modern life has deprived us of it. Here is how to get it back. The broth cools in its pot. The steam rises and dissipates. In the kitchen, a woman ladles it into a mug and holds it with both hands and believes, in the warmth of the thing, that she is doing something right. Whether she is a question that depends on which literature you read, and how carefully, and what you allow the word right to mean. The kettle whistles in a kitchen somewhere. The broth goes cold eventually, as all things do. But the story that surrounded it has a considerably longer shelf life than any gelatin content the bones gave up. Let us read the label, not skim it. the way one skims a label in a shop while deciding whether to put the product in the basket. Read it closely. With the particular attention that the label was not designed to receive, because labels are designed for skimmers, and close reading is a different thing entirely. The product is a premium marine collagen supplement, positioned at the upper end of the market. The front panel shows a clean white canister, with the product name in a font that is both modern and slightly classical, not sans serif entirely, which would be too clinical but not ornate, which would suggest tradition rather than science. There is a photograph of clear blue water, implying the ocean, implying the marine source, implying purity and depth, and the particular kind of naturalness that sells well in beauty contexts. The front panel text reads, Advanced Marine Collagen Peptides, Skin, Hair, Nails, Clinically Studied, 10 grams per serving, with vitamin C. Each of these phrases is doing work. Advanced is a modifier with no regulatory definition and no required meaning. It differentiates this product from a hypothetical, less advanced version without specifying in what way the advancement has occurred. Marine collagen peptides is accurate. The product does contain hydrolyzed collagen from marine sources. Skin, hair, nails is a list of the body parts the product is implicitly claimed to benefit. The dots between the words are grammatically ambiguous, suggesting connection without making a sentence that would require a verb and therefore a demonstrable claim. Clinically studied is not the same as clinically proven. It means that the ingredient has been the subject of clinical research, which is true of virtually everything that has ever been studied in any context. 10 grams per serving is a specific and accurate fact. With vitamin C acknowledges the presence of an additional ingredient without specifying its quantity or purpose. The back panel is more informative and considerably less read. The supplement facts panel lists the full ingredient contents: 10 grams of hydrolyzed fish collagen, 60 milligrams of vitamin C, and a proprietary blend of marine botanicals consisting of 300 milligrams of an extract complex, combining sea buckthorn, marine algae, and hyaluronic acid from a source not specified. The 60 milligrams of vitamin C represents 67% of the recommended daily value. This is enough to meet the vitamin C requirement of most adults, and potentially to support adequate vitamin C status for collagen synthesis. It is not an unusually high dose. The same amount is in many ordinary multivitamins and in a small glass of orange juice. The 300 milligrams of proprietary blend merits a pause. A proprietary blend is a mixture of ingredients listed as a group, with only the total weight of the mixture disclosed rather than the individual amounts of each ingredient. This disclosure structure is permitted under current labeling regulations and is widely used in the supplement industry for two stated reasons: to protect the proprietary formulation from being copied by competitors, and because providing individual weights of each component would make the label unwieldy. The unstated reason is that proprietary blends allow manufacturers to include small quantities of expensive or trendy ingredients. In this case, hyaluronic acid, which commands a marketing premium, without disclosing that the actual amount present is too small to have any plausible physiological effect, at the dose contained in a single serving. Hyaluronic acid in oral supplements has preliminary evidence for skin hydration effects in trials using daily doses of typically 80 to 200 milligrams. 300 milligrams of the proprietary blend containing 3 ingredients suggests, at most, 100 milligrams of hyaluronic acid, and likely considerably less. Whether 100 milligrams or less of oral hyaluronic acid produces a significant effect on skin hydration on top of the collagen peptides with which it is combined has not been studied. The ingredient's presence on the label is doing marketing work rather than nutritional work. The back panel also contains the structure function claim section, set in a font slightly smaller than the surrounding text, helps support skin elasticity and hydration, may promote hair and nail health, supports connective tissue. The word may in the hair and nail claim is notable. It signals a weaker evidentiary position than the indicative verb helps support in the skin claim, which is itself not claiming efficacy but implying it. The 3 claims together cover the body territory implied by the front panel without making a statement that the FDA's structure function guidance would require substantiation beyond the standard the manufacturer has already met. The disclaimer is present, in the smallest font on the label. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. It appears in the lower right corner of the back panel, adjacent to the barcode. Most consumers reading the front panel and the product claims will not have their eyes near the lower right corner of the back panel. The placement is not an accident. Below the disclaimer is the recommended use. Mix 1 scoop in 8 ounces of water, juice, or your favourite beverage. Best results with consistent daily use. The phrase best results with consistent daily use is doing several things simultaneously. It is an instruction. It is also managing expectations. Best results implies that inconsistent use will produce worse results, that the product's effectiveness depends partly on the consumer's compliance, and therefore that any perceived lack of result can be attributed to insufficient consistency rather than insufficient efficacy. It is also establishing the subscription-friendly usage pattern that maximizes lifetime customer value for the brand. The website URL at the bottom of the panel leads, if visited, to a brand website containing testimonials, before and after photographs, references to science, linked to the manufacturer's own research page rather than to the primary literature, and a subscription offer that provides 15% off the retail price and free shipping in exchange for a monthly auto-ship arrangement. This label is not unusual, it is typical. Tens of thousands of supplement products are labelled in essentially this way, with the same structure of front panel aspiration, back panel qualification, proprietary blend ambiguity, structure function claim, and regulatory disclaimer. Reading it carefully takes approximately 10 minutes. Buying the product in a shop takes approximately 20 seconds. The label was designed for the 20 seconds. This close reading is an exercise in recovering the 10 minutes that the design does not encourage you to spend. The product is real. The collagen is real. The vitamin C is real. The proprietary blend is real, if modest. The science behind the claims is real, within the specific limits described in the clinical chapters of this story. The label is real. All of it is real. None of it is quite what it first appeared to be. If you're drifting now, let yourself go. Subscribe so the next story is waiting when you return. Sleep well. The morning routine video is a specific genre of content that achieved cultural ubiquity in the period between 2015 and 2020, and that continues to accumulate billions of views annually on platforms that had not yet existed when the collagen supplement category first arrived in Western markets. The format is consistent. A person with good skin and an aesthetically pleasing kitchen moves through their morning, narrating their rituals in a tone that is simultaneously intimate and aspirational. The coffee, the gratitude journal, the skincare, the supplement, the moment when the canister comes off the shelf and the scoop goes into the cup and the camera lingers on the label just long enough for the brand to be legible. The morning routine video works because it performs a kind of access. Access to the private morning of someone whose appearance and life the viewer admires. It is a testimonial and a tutorial and a piece of companionship entertainment simultaneously. The viewer is not being advertised to in the traditional sense, they are being invited in, and the products that appear in the invitation acquire, by proximity and association, the credibility that comes with personal recommendation rather than commercial announcement. Collagen powder was, visually and narratively, well suited to this format. It photographs well, a clean white powder scooping into a clear glass, or stirring into coffee to turn it slightly creamy. It fits within the aesthetic of the broader wellness lifestyle category that morning routine content inhabits. Clean, intentional, not too clinical, performed as a form of self-care rather than medical compliance. And it fits the verbal palette of that content, the language of supporting, nourishing, giving your body what it needs, investing in yourself, playing the long game. The influencer economy that drove collagen's growth in the late 2000s operated through several channels that overlapped and reinforced each other. The largest creators, people with audiences of millions, received formal partnership arrangements with supplement brands involving paid content, affiliate links that paid a commission on every purchase made through the creator's unique URL, and gifting programs that supplied product in exchange for coverage. These relationships required disclosure under advertising standards in most jurisdictions, and many creators provided it in the form of small hashtags or brief verbal acknowledgements that were technically compliant and practically invisible against the volume of the content they accompanied. Below the top tier, a much larger ecosystem of mid-level creators operated in a grey zone of informal relationships. Products received unsolicited, mentioned without formal arrangement, discussed in the context of genuine enthusiasm that was real but also commercially advantageous. These creators were not technically paid for the mentions, but the brands knew exactly what they were doing when they sent product. The calculation was simple. 5,000 micro-influencers mentioning a product once each could reach the same audience as one major campaign, while remaining largely under the regulatory threshold for formal disclosure. The effect of this distribution model on the collagen category was dramatic and rapid. Between 2016 and 2020, the collagen supplement market in the United States approximately tripled in size. The growth was driven by the beauty collagen category specifically, collagen marketed for skin, hair and nails rather than for joint health, and by the delivery formats that the beauty market preferred: flavoured powders, beauty drinks, capsules with elegant packaging, and collagen-enriched food products positioned at the intersection of nutrition and indulgence. The demographic that drove this growth was primarily women aged 25 to 45, an age group that had grown up with social media, was accustomed to consuming health and beauty content through screens, and had strong existing spending habits in both the beauty and wellness categories. This demographic was also, not coincidentally, the demographic most likely to be beginning to notice changes in their skin related to the natural decline in collagen production that accelerates in the 30s, and therefore the demographic most emotionally receptive to a product that promised to address exactly what they were beginning to see. The positioning of collagen as a proactive anti-aging intervention, rather than a reactive treatment, was a significant piece of the category's marketing evolution. Earlier skincare had often been positioned remedially, for wrinkles, for blemishes, for visible problems. The new collagen marketing positioned the product preventively, for women who did not yet have dramatic visible signs of aging, but who were aware, through a combination of biology education and social media messaging, that their collagen was already declining. This preventive framing was both commercially astute and scientifically complex. It is true that collagen decline begins in the mid-20s. It is considerably less clear whether supplementation in one's 20s and 30s has any meaningful effect on how one's skin looks in one's 50s, because no study of that length has been conducted. The preventive claim is therefore not supported by evidence. There is simply no long-term trial data to support or refute it, but it also cannot be definitively disproved, and in the absence of disproof, it functions commercially as though it were established. The specific products that rose to prominence in this period varied in their formulations. Some contained only hydrolyzed collagen, in doses of 5 to 15 grams per serving. Others combined collagen with cofactors that the body uses in collagen synthesis: vitamin C, which is required for the hydroxylation of proline into hydroxyproline, a key step in collagen's triple helix assembly; zinc, which plays a role in collagen cross-linking; biotin, which is associated with hair and nail health, and which appears in collagen products with such regularity that the association has become a kind of genre convention regardless of its specific relevance. The inclusion of vitamin C in collagen supplements is one of the more defensible formulation choices in the category. Vitamin C deficiency genuinely does impair collagen synthesis. This has been known since the study of scurvy, which is the clinical result of prolonged vitamin C deficiency, and which involves, among other symptoms, the breakdown of existing collagen in skin and connective tissue. Adding vitamin C to a collagen supplement does not prove the supplement works, but it does ensure that the consumer is not vitamin C deficient, which is a genuine prerequisite for adequate collagen synthesis. The inclusion of biotin is a different matter. Biotin, vitamin B7, has been associated in popular culture with hair and nail health for decades, a reputation that is largely based on a small number of studies in people with biotin deficiency, which is rare, and on the general principle that any B vitamin deficiency will affect rapidly dividing cells, including those in hair follicles. For people who are not biotin deficient, which is most people eating a varied diet, biotin supplementation has not been shown to have any meaningful effect on hair or nail growth. Its presence in collagen products is a marketing decision, not a nutritional one. The morning routine video continues. The creator stirs the powder into her coffee with a small spoon. The powder dissolves cleanly. She takes a sip. She smiles, genuinely or performatively or both. In the comments, people ask where they can buy it. In the link in her bio, the affiliate code is ready. The morning light comes through the window and falls across the counter, and everything looks, for a moment, like the beginning of something good. The counter is clean, the canister is beautiful, the science, as always, is in a different room entirely. Walking the supplement aisle of any moderately well-stocked health food shop in 2024, or scrolling the relevant section of any online retailer, presents a product landscape that is simultaneously overwhelming in its variety and narrower than it appears. Beneath the design differences and the marketing distinctions and the brand personalities and the price points that range from $10 to $150, most collagen supplements share a remarkably similar core. Hydrolyzed collagen peptides, primarily bovine or marine in origin, at a dose somewhere between 5 and 15 grams per serving. The differentiation between products happens at several levels, not all of which correspond to meaningful differences in efficacy. The source of the collagen, bovine versus marine versus chicken, is the most fundamental distinction. As discussed, the scientific evidence does not clearly establish that one source is superior to another for skin outcomes, though marine collagen commands a price premium and a marketing position that implies superiority. The molecular weight of the peptides, usually described as low molecular weight or small peptides, is a distinction that collagen marketers have invested heavily in communicating, on the argument that smaller peptides are more bioavailable, more easily absorbed, and more effective at the target tissue. The evidence for meaningful differences between products on this dimension is not strong. Most hydrolyzed collagen supplements, regardless of brand, are hydrolyzed to a similar average molecular weight range because the hydrolysis process is industrially standardized. The brands that claim superiority on this basis are generally comparing themselves to a category baseline that most commercial products already meet. The addition of specific cofactors, vitamin C, silicon, zinc, biotin, hyaluronic acid, various botanical extracts, distinguishes some products from bare collagen supplements. The rationale for these additions varies in quality. Vitamin C co-supplementation is the most defensible, for the reasons described earlier. Silicon, usually supplied as orthosilicic acid, has some preliminary evidence for effects on hair and nail tensile strength, but is not well studied for skin collagen specifically. Hyaluronic acid as an oral supplement has preliminary evidence for skin hydration in small trials, though the mechanism is not fully established. Biotin, as discussed, lacks evidence for effects in non-deficient individuals. The botanical additions that appear in premium collagen formulations, extracts of ashwagandha, turmeric, ginseng, marine algae, or various fruit extracts, positioned as antioxidant or anti-inflammatory, represent the category's most aspirational marketing territory and its weakest evidence territory. These ingredients may have individual health properties, and they may have some theoretical relevance to skin health through anti-inflammatory or antioxidant mechanisms, but they have not been studied in combination with collagen in ways that establish any additive or synergistic benefit. The pricing structure of the collagen supplement market is not closely correlated with ingredient quality or evidence quality. Some of the most expensive products contain the same hydrolyzed bovine collagen peptides as products costing a fraction of the price. The price premium reflects brand positioning, packaging design, marketing investment, retail channel, and the perceived association with a quality lifestyle, rather than differences in the core ingredient. A product sold through a luxury wellness retailer in recycled paper packaging with a clean design aesthetic costs more than a product sold through a warehouse club in a bulk canister, and the difference tells you about the marketing strategy rather than the collagen. Third-party testing and quality certifications represent a meaningful source of differentiation that is genuinely worth attending to. Because the supplement industry operates without the pre-market approval required for pharmaceuticals, the quality of what is inside a canister is not guaranteed by the regulatory process. Third-party testing organizations, NSF International, Informed Sport, USP, test products to verify that they contain what the label says in the amount stated without contaminants. Products that carry these certifications have undergone testing that unverified products have not. In a market where independent analysis has occasionally found discrepancies between label claims and product contents, third-party verification is not a trivial distinction. The form factor of the supplement, powder versus capsule versus liquid, affects the consumer experience without necessarily affecting the biological outcome. Powders offer the advantage of higher dose efficiency. Fitting 10 grams of collagen into 2 large capsules requires considerably more capsule material than dissolving it in a liquid. Liquids offer portability and absorbability advantages, but are more expensive to produce and ship than powders. Ready-to-drink collagen beverages sit at the premium end of the market and are consumed as much for the ritual and the lifestyle association as for the specific ingredient. The flavoured powder category deserves particular mention as a commercial innovation. Unflavoured hydrolyzed collagen powder is nearly tasteless and dissolves cleanly in both hot and cold liquids, properties that make it exceptionally convenient to incorporate into existing food and drink habits. Flavoured versions, chocolate, vanilla, salted caramel, unflavoured but sweetened, position the supplement as a treat rather than a medicine, as something consumed by choice and pleasure rather than discipline. This reframing has been commercially significant, shifting collagen from the supplement as duty category to the supplement as reward category, which has a larger consumer base and lower purchase friction. Beauty collagen sold as a coffee creamer is perhaps the apotheosis of this trend, a supplement that is simultaneously coffee routine, beauty ritual and nutritional habit, requiring no additional behavior change because it is embedded in a behavior the consumer is already performing every day. The supplement disappears into the existing routine. The routine acquires a new layer of intention. The morning coffee becomes, in a very gentle sense, a medical act. The regulatory response to the collagen supplement market has been inconsistent across jurisdictions and between product types. The FTC's increased attention to unsubstantiated health claims has resulted in some enforcement actions against collagen supplement brands making specific claims about wrinkles, skin aging, or joint health without adequate clinical support. Several brands have settled with the FTC, paying civil penalties and modifying their advertising. The settlements are reported in regulatory news outlets and rarely penetrate to consumer awareness. The products continue on the shelf under modified descriptions. In the European Union, where EFSA has rejected most specific collagen health claims for lack of evidence, brands have adapted by using what regulators and consumer advocates call ghost claims, implying benefits through imagery, testimonials, and product naming without making explicit verbal claims that would require substantiation. A product called Advanced Skin Support Collagen Formula, with an image of radiant skin and testimonials from users describing improved skin appearances in this framework, making no claim that requires substantiation, while making every implication that drives the purchase. This is the current state of the aisle. The products are there, the labels are careful, the imagery is aspirational. The science is somewhere else, reading its own methodology sections, trying to figure out what, precisely, is happening in the dermis of the people whose jars line the shelf from here to the end of the row. The question of where the collagen comes from, before the processing, before the hydrolyzer, before the tin with the clean label, is one that the marketing materials address with varying degrees of transparency, and that consumers ask with varying degrees of curiosity, and that the answers to are more complicated than the words bovine or marine or sustainably sourced might suggest. Bovine collagen, derived from cattle, is the oldest and most abundant source in the supplement industry. The raw material is primarily bovine hide, the skin of the animal, which is a byproduct of the beef industry. The hide undergoes a liming process to remove hair and non-collagen proteins, followed by acid or enzymatic treatment to release the collagen, followed by hydrolysis to break it into peptides, followed by drying to produce the powder that ends up in supplements. The process is industrial in scale and not particularly aesthetically pleasing when described in detail, though it is also, in the context of what is done with agricultural waste products, not inherently objectionable. Bovine hide collagen is predominantly type 1 and type 3, the forms most associated with skin, tendons, and bones. It is abundant, cheap by supplement ingredient standards, and well studied relative to other collagen sources. The quality of the raw material varies depending on the farming practices used to raise the cattle, and this is where the sourcing claims that appear on premium supplement labels become relevant. Grass-fed and pasture-raised are qualifiers that some brands deploy, often with implied health benefits that are not well supported by evidence. The collagen extracted from the hide of a grass-fed cow is not demonstrably different in composition from that of a grain-fed cow, though the farming practices differ in ways that many consumers care about on other grounds. Marine collagen represents the category's significant growth story of the 2000s and 10s. Derived primarily from the skin and scales of fish, typically tilapia, cod, or salmon, sourced as byproducts of the seafood processing industry, marine collagen is predominantly type 1 collagen with a slightly different amino acid profile from bovine collagen, higher in certain hydroxyproline-containing peptides, slightly different molecular weight distribution. Whether these differences produce meaningfully different effects in the human body is not established by the current literature, though brands that use marine collagen tend to imply they do. Marine collagen gained significant market share in the latter part of the 2000s for several reasons. The first was sustainability positioning. The argument that collagen derived from fish byproducts that would otherwise be discarded was a more environmentally responsible choice than bovine-derived collagen, which carries the full environmental burden of cattle agriculture, including land use, water use, and greenhouse gas emissions. This argument has some validity at the level of comparative environmental impact, though the actual sustainability credentials of any specific marine collagen product depend on factors: the specific fishery, the processing methods, the packaging, the supply chain, that are rarely verifiable from the label. The second reason was its association with premium positioning. Marine collagen, by virtue of being newer to the market, less familiar, and more expensive to produce, could be priced at a premium over bovine collagen, while the marketing communicated that this premium reflected superior quality or bioavailability. Some studies have suggested that marine collagen peptides may be absorbed more rapidly than bovine collagen peptides due to their slightly smaller average molecular weight. Whether more rapid absorption translates into more effective skin outcomes is, again, not established. The third reason was the absence of religious and cultural restrictions that limit the consumer base for bovine collagen. Collagen from porcine sources, pig skin and pig bones, which are also abundant and inexpensive, has historically been excluded from Muslim and Jewish markets. Bovine collagen from non-halal or non-kosher certified sources faces similar restrictions. Marine collagen from fish that are permissible under these dietary frameworks has no such restrictions, opening a much broader global consumer base and making it the preferred choice for brands seeking to operate in markets across South and Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and among observant communities globally. Vegan collagen is a separate category entirely, and one that requires careful examination of what vegan in this context actually means. There is no plant source of collagen. The protein is a product of animal biology and does not exist in any plant. What are sold as vegan collagen supplements are therefore not collagen but collagen boosters, products that contain the nutritional building blocks for collagen synthesis, combined with the cofactors required for that synthesis, in the hope that supplying these raw materials will prompt the body's own fibroblasts to produce more of the protein. The primary ingredients in vegan collagen boosters typically include vitamin C, zinc, copper, silicon, and various plant extracts, amino acids from plant protein sources, antioxidants intended to protect existing collagen from oxidative damage, and compounds like silica from bamboo or horsetail extract that are associated in the traditional herbal medicine literature with skin and connective tissue health. The evidence for vegan collagen boosters is even thinner than the evidence for collagen peptide supplements, which is itself not especially thick. The ingredients are individually defensible. Vitamin C's role in collagen synthesis is well established, as is the role of zinc and copper in the enzymatic processes that assemble collagen fibers. But there is no clinical evidence that combining these ingredients in supplement form and consuming them daily produces the same outcome as consuming collagen peptides directly. The mechanism is different and the evidence base is different, and the marketing that positions them as equivalent reflects a commercial necessity rather than a scientific equivalence. The sourcing story also encompasses a dimension that the industry rarely discusses and consumers rarely ask about: the sourcing of the raw material in the countries where the processing occurs, which are often in Asia, particularly China, which is a major global producer of collagen for both supplement and food applications. The quality control standards applied to collagen produced in different facilities for different markets vary, and the degree to which the claims on a label accurately reflect the product inside the canister is a question that independent testing has occasionally complicated. A series of independent analyses conducted by American and European consumer testing organizations over the period from 2015 to 2022 found varying degrees of discrepancy between the collagen content claimed on supplement labels and the collagen content measured in the laboratory. Some products contained less collagen than claimed. Some showed evidence of amino acid spiking, a practice in which cheap amino acids like glycine or taurine are added to a product to inflate its apparent protein content without the cost of additional actual collagen. These findings were inconsistent and did not apply to all products tested, and the category's more reputable manufacturers responded with improved third-party testing and transparency measures. But the findings were real, and the practice they described was real, and the gap they represented, between the label and the contents, was one more in the series of gaps that this story has been mapping. The sea gives up its scales, the cattle give up their hides. The fish processing plant and the tannery produce their byproducts, which are collected and processed and dried and shipped to facilities where they become supplements. At every stage, something is transformed. The raw material becomes peptide, the peptide becomes powder, the powder becomes label, the label becomes promise. The original substance, the protein in the skin of a fish, the fibrous architecture of a bovine dermis, is very distant from what eventually arrives in the morning routine video. It is still, in some form, present, but it has been through a great deal on the way. The collagen supplement is not ultimately about collagen. It is about aging, and aging in the specific cultural context of the early 21st century is about something other than simply the passage of time. It is about visibility, about legibility, about the particular anxiety of becoming someone whose value the culture has decided is diminishing, and the specific hope that this process might be slowed or arrested, or at least managed in ways that keep the worst of it from the mirror. This is not new. The anti-aging industry is as old as the desire to be young, which is very old indeed. What is relatively new is the scale at which the desire is monetized, the precision with which the products are targeted at specific demographic anxieties, and the particular cruelty of a media environment in which the before and after photograph circulates at the speed of light, and the scientific literature circulates at the speed of peer review. The women who buy the most collagen supplements are broadly women between 30 and 55. This is not an accident of biology. It is a product of a cultural narrative that has positioned this age range as the period in which skin aging becomes visible enough to be troubling, and the woman who experiences it is responsible for managing it, ideally with a combination of products and procedures and habits that signal investment and self-care and the particular version of aging gracefully that means not appearing to age at all. The supplement industry did not invent this narrative. It arrived to find it already fully formed, already operating through fashion magazines and advertising, and the simple social comparison that is intrinsic to human social life. What the supplement industry did was provide a new delivery mechanism for the response, something you could do daily, from your own kitchen, that felt like agency, felt like prevention, felt like the kind of intelligent self-investment that the culture simultaneously encouraged and made necessary. There is a specific emotional texture to the relationship between women and anti-aging products that the marketing in this category has become expert at addressing. It is not vanity, exactly, though the culture often frames it that way, and thereby implies a judgment. It is closer to something that combines genuine biological concern. Changes are happening in the body, and some of them are noticeable, and some of them have implications for how one moves through the world, with cultural anxiety about those changes and the social weight they carry. The fear of looking older is not irrational in a culture that consistently attributes less competence, attractiveness, and social value to older women than to older men of equivalent age. The supplement in this context is not merely a cosmetic product. It is a response to a real social calculus. However much one might critique that calculus, however clearly one might see that the appropriate response is to change the calculus rather than comply with it. Compliance and critique are not mutually exclusive. The woman who takes a collagen supplement while being fully aware of the cultural structures that have made her feel she should is not deluded. She is navigating. The marketing for collagen supplements has become sophisticated about addressing this emotional terrain. The language of empowerment, taking control of your own skin health, investing in yourself, doing what you can with what you know, positions the supplement not as capitulation to aging anxiety, but as active self-determination. The language of science adds a rational dimension. This is not vanity, it is biology. You're not trying to look younger, you're supporting your body's natural processes. The distinction between these things may be thin, but it is emotionally important. The beauty from within framing is particularly effective in this regard. It shifts the locus of action from the external, creams applied to a surface, procedures performed by a professional, to the internal, something consumed, incorporated into the body's own chemistry, working from inside out. This framing appeals to a cultural moment in which the authentic, the natural and the internal are valorized over the performed, the processed, and the external. It also, not incidentally, positions the supplement as an ethical alternative to injectables and other procedures, which carry their own anxieties and stigmas and which are considerably more expensive. The influencer who positions her morning collagen routine alongside her meditation and her journaling and her gratitude practice is constructing a broader narrative about her relationship with her own body, one in which the supplement is an act of self-love rather than insecurity, part of a holistic approach to well-being rather than a specific response to a specific fear. This narrative is more appealing than a straightforward transaction with an anti-aging anxiety. It is also more commercially durable because it is invested in the lifestyle rather than the ingredient, and lifestyles are stickier than product categories. The men who take collagen supplements, a minority of the market but a growing one, face a different version of the same emotional negotiation. Male anti-aging anxiety exists, but has historically been less commercially explicit, the marketing more likely to frame the supplement in terms of performance, recovery and function than in terms of appearance. Collagen marketed to men emphasizes joint health, muscle recovery, and connective tissue support. The skin benefit, if mentioned at all, is a secondary consideration. The same product, often with the same ingredient, is positioned differently because the emotional context of the purchase is different. The aging woman and the aging man are both responding to real biology. The biology does not care about the marketing. The collagen declining in both of them declines at similar rates. The fibroblasts in both of them are doing their best with increasingly limited capacity. What is different is the cultural surround, the pressure, the visibility, the social consequence of visible aging, and the emotional relationship to the supplement that results from that cultural surround. The supplement exists at the intersection of biology and culture, of evidence and desire, of the actual science of collagen and the social science of aging, in a society that has complicated feelings about time. Neither the biology nor the culture is going away. The supplement business is, therefore, unlikely to go away either. The question is what a person, navigating both biology and culture with full awareness of both, does with that knowledge. The answer is probably whatever makes them feel good, as long as they know what they are actually buying. We should spend some time with the jar. The original jar, the one from the department store counter in 1987, the one that started this story and the one that, in various forms, has never stopped selling. The topical collagen cream, the product applied to the surface of skin rather than consumed through the gut, raises a separate and in some ways simpler set of scientific questions than the supplement, and the answers to those questions have been clearer for considerably longer. The skin is, among its many other functions, a barrier. This is not incidental to its purpose. It is central to it. The skin's primary evolutionary role is to keep the outside world outside and the inside world inside, to prevent pathogens, toxins, allergens, and the simple desiccating effect of dry air from reaching the body's interior. It performs this function with considerable competence. The outermost layer of skin, the stratum corneum, is composed of dead, keratin-filled cells, corneocytes, embedded in a matrix of lipids arranged in a lamellar structure that is sometimes described as resembling a brick-and-mortar wall. This barrier is selective. Small lipid-soluble molecules can penetrate it to some degree. This is the basis of transdermal drug delivery, nicotine patches, hormone patches, some topical pain medications that work by penetrating the skin to reach underlying tissue. But the molecules that can make this transit are small, typically under 500 daltons in molecular weight, and lipid-soluble, meaning they can dissolve in the lipid matrix of the stratum corneum. Collagen is a protein. It has a molecular weight, even in hydrolyzed form, of somewhere between approximately 800 and 300,000 daltons, depending on the degree of hydrolysis. The intact collagen molecules found in cosmetic creams, unhydrolyzed, as they typically are in topical products, because hydrolyzed collagen changes the texture and feel of a cream in ways that are not always desirable, are enormous relative to the pore size of the stratum corneum. They cannot penetrate the skin, they sit on its surface. This fact has been known in the dermatology literature since at least the 1980s. A review published in the British Journal of Dermatology in 1987, the same year as the hypothetical department store scene that opened this story, explicitly noted that collagen molecules applied topically could not penetrate the skin barrier due to their molecular size and hydrophilicity. The conclusion was not that topical collagen products were worthless. It noted that large molecules sitting on the surface of skin can have genuine moisturizing effects by forming a film that reduces transepidermal water loss, but that claims about topical collagen penetrating skin or stimulating dermal collagen synthesis were not supported by the evidence. The cosmetics industry was fully aware of this finding. The dermatologists who consulted for cosmetics companies knew it. The laboratory scientists who formulated the products knew it. The marketing teams knew it in the specific way that people know things that are professionally inconvenient, accurately but without any urgency to communicate the inconvenience broadly. What emerged from this situation was a vocabulary of strategic ambiguity that has shaped cosmetic claims language ever since. A cream cannot legally claim, in most regulatory jurisdictions, to penetrate skin or to alter skin structure, because that would make it a drug rather than a cosmetic, and drugs face a regulatory burden that cosmetics do not. But a cream can claim to help skin look more youthful, or to reduce the appearance of fine lines, or to leave skin feeling firmer, because these claims describe surface appearances and subjective perceptions rather than structural changes. The topical collagen cream does within these limits do something. The large collagen molecules form a film on the skin surface that reduces water loss, making skin more hydrated and therefore plumper in appearance. Some hydrolyzed collagen peptides in topical formulations are small enough to interact with the very surface layers of the skin, and these interactions may have some modest effect on the cohesion of the stratum corneum. The overall effect, skin that feels temporarily smoother, more supple, better hydrated, is real. It is not the effect implied by the word collagen on the label, which invokes all the associations of the protein's role in the dermis, but it is an effect. The dermatology that has moved the field forward in the decades since the 1987 review has done so largely through different ingredients, retinoids, vitamin C serums, peptides specifically designed for transcutaneous delivery, growth factors, and eventually biologics, that actually do interact with skin biology in ways that can be measured. These ingredients, unlike topical collagen, have mechanisms of action that survive scientific scrutiny. Retinoids, derived from vitamin A, have the most robust evidence base in anti-aging dermatology and work by binding to nuclear receptors in skin cells and modulating gene expression in ways that increase collagen production and skin cell turnover. The irony, and it is a gentle irony, not an angry one, is that the ingredient with the most name recognition in the anti-aging category, the word that appears on more product labels and sells more product annually than almost anything else, is precisely the ingredient for which the mechanism of action does not survive scrutiny at the level of topical application. Collagen applied to skin cannot reach the dermis. This is simply what the biology says. The creams sell regardless. What the retinoids and the active vitamin C serums have to offer, if a person wants to spend money on something that demonstrably affects skin at the level of the dermis, is another story, and one that the dermatology literature tells with considerably more confidence. But it is harder to make retinoid sound like a morning ritual of self-care, and harder to position a prescription Tretino in tube against a backdrop of morning light and a good-looking kitchen counter, and the beauty industry has always had more talent for the story than for the mechanism. The jar sits on the counter. The lid is embossed with something suggesting science, a molecule, a cross-section, a word in a font that implies laboratory precision. The cream inside is white and silky and smells of something expensive. Applied to the face, it will temporarily make the skin feel softer. It will help prevent the loss of moisture that would occur without it. These are real things. They are not nothing. But the word on the front of the jar, the word collagen in its specific biological dermis-associating sense, is doing considerably more work than the molecule itself. This is the oldest story in the beauty industry. The word is not the thing, the promise is not the proof, the jar is not the skin, but the jar is beautiful, and the skin is hopeful, and the counter in the morning light is everything the camera needs. The collagen supplement industry accumulates in its particulars a collection of small facts that the broader story tends to wash over. These facts are not dramatic, and individually they do not change the conclusions available to anyone who has read the methodology sections carefully. But they are the texture of the story, the specific detail that, when you find it, makes the industry feel real and human and complicated, rather than simply corporate. The first small fact: the majority of the collagen used in global supplement production comes from Brazil. Brazil is the world's largest beef exporter, and the processing of Brazilian cattle, hides for leather and gelatin represents a major agricultural industry. The collagen supplement boom of the 2010s created a new demand stream for materials that had previously been processed primarily into gelatin for food use or discarded. The supplement industry did not create the Brazilian cattle industry, but it has become one of its customers, and the environmental footprint of the supplement you stir into your morning coffee is connected, several steps up the chain, to the Amazon basin and the debates about land use that surrounds it. The second small fact: fish collagen, marine collagen, the premium form, is largely derived from the skin and scales of fish, processed for food in Southeast Asia, particularly in Vietnam and Thailand, where tilapia and other farmed fish are major export commodities. The fish skin and scales were, before the collagen supplement demand existed, waste products. The supplement industry has created a value stream from what was previously discarded, which is, depending on one's framework, either a sustainability achievement or an incentive structure that encourages the continuation of aquaculture practices with their own environmental complications. The third small fact: the word collagen on a supplement label does not guarantee that the product contains collagen at the advertised concentration. The supplement industry's lack of mandatory pre-market testing means that label accuracy is dependent on the manufacturer's own quality control or voluntary third-party testing. A 2020 analysis by the Clean Label Project, a consumer advocacy organisation, tested 87 collagen supplements and found that a significant minority did not contain the amount of collagen stated on the label, and that several showed evidence of amino acid spiking, the addition of cheaper amino acids to inflate apparent protein content. The fourth small fact: skin colour affects the measurement of skin quality in ways that most collagen supplement trials have not adequately addressed. The instrumented measurement techniques most commonly used in clinical trials, optical coherence tomography, reflectometry, and some forms of ultrasound, were developed and validated primarily on light skin tones. Their accuracy and interpretation in darker skin types is less well established, and the population studied in most collagen trials have been predominantly white European or East Asian. Whether the findings from these trials generalize to people with darker skin tones is a question the literature has not yet answered. The fifth small fact: some of the earliest and most rigorous clinical research on oral collagen for skin was conducted in Germany, at academic dermatology institutions that had no financial relationship with supplement manufacturers. The German dermatology tradition has a long history of taking nutracosmetics, a term that the German regulatory environment created and that has since been adopted globally, more seriously as a scientific category than the Anglo-American tradition, which has tended to view supplements with more skepticism. Several of the most cited positive collagen trials in the literature are German in origin, and their relative independence from industry funding gives them more weight in the evidence hierarchy than the majority of industry-funded research from other countries. The sixth small fact: the placebo in collagen supplement trials is harder to formulate than it sounds. An ideal placebo for a collagen study would be a powder that looks identical to the collagen supplement, tastes and dissolves identically, and contains no collagen or collagen-derived components, but otherwise matches the supplement nutritionally. Same calories, same protein content from non-collagen sources, same vitamins and minerals. Formulating this is technically possible but expensive, and the cost of a properly matched placebo discourages its use in industry-funded trials, where cost control is a priority. Many trials have used a zero-protein placebo, usually a flavoured starch powder, that is nutritionally quite different from the collagen group. This design choice inflates the apparent benefit of collagen by comparing it not against another protein source, but against nothing. The seventh small fact: The Japanese functional food market still leads the world in collagen product innovation, and its consumer research consistently shows higher satisfaction rates with collagen products than Western markets, a difference that researchers attribute partly to longer consumer experience with the category, partly to greater cultural familiarity with beauty-adjacent nutrition, and partly to the genuine expectation management difference between a Japanese consumer who expects a gradual and modest improvement over months, and a Western consumer who may be expecting something more dramatic and more rapid. Expectation management may be one of the most important variables in consumer satisfaction with supplements, and the collagen industry has not always managed it well. The eighth small fact, retinol, vitamin A in the cosmetically active form, remains the only topical skincare ingredient with robust, independent, replicated evidence for increasing collagen production in the dermis. It has been in clinical use since the 1980s. It is not glamorous. It is not new. It peels some skin. It cannot be used during pregnancy. It requires a period of adjustment during which skin gets worse before it gets better. It is significantly less fun to talk about in a morning routine video than a scoop of high-gloss collagen powder. It has never had $9 billion in annual sales behind it. These facts are related. The ninth small fact, the amino acid glycine, which makes up a third of collagen's amino acid content, is cheap, widely available as a standalone supplement, and has its own emerging evidence base for benefits ranging from improved sleep to reduced inflammation to support for glutathione synthesis. A person who wanted to ensure adequate glycine intake could buy pure glycine powder for a fraction of the cost of collagen supplement and consume it in similar amounts. Whether the effects would be similar is not established. The specific collagen-derived peptides, particularly the hydroxyproline-containing ones, may have effects that free glycine does not. But the option exists and is rarely mentioned in collagen marketing for obvious reasons. The 10th small fact. Sunscreen is free in the sense that it costs nothing relative to what it prevents. A consistent SPF 30 or higher habit, applied daily to exposed skin, is supported by 50 years of research as the single most effective intervention for preventing the external causes of skin aging. The cosmetic industry sells enormous quantities of moisturizers and serums with SPF. It sells vastly more moisturizers and serums without it, because the products without SPF are allowed to make more interesting claims and can be positioned more seductively. The most important thing that can be put on skin is the one that is in most routine products only as a secondary feature. These small facts do not undermine the industry entirely. They simply fill in the texture of a story that the marketing smooths over. The industry is real, the ingredient is real, the hope is real. The gaps between them, between what is known and what is claimed, between what is in the canister and what is on the label, between what the trial shows and what the marketing implies, are also real. Both things are true at once, which is the usual situation with complicated things. The small facts rest in their drawers, patient and specific, waiting to be found by anyone who goes looking. Having spent considerable time examining what the collagen literature does not quite establish, it is worth spending equal time on what the broader skin health literature does. The existence of inadequate evidence for collagen supplements does not imply that nothing can be done about skin aging through nutrition or supplementation. Some things can. The evidence for them is not perfect. Nutritional science is structurally difficult, and perfect evidence in this field is rare, but it is considerably stronger than what the collagen category offers. The most important factor in skin aging that is within voluntary control is sun exposure. Ultraviolet radiation is the single largest extrinsic cause of premature skin aging, responsible, by most estimates, for 80% or more of the visible aging of facial skin that occurs over a lifetime. UV radiation directly damages DNA in skin cells, induces inflammatory pathways that degrade collagen through matrix metalloproteinase enzymes, and causes cross-linking of existing collagen fibers in ways that reduce their elasticity. A consistent, adequate sunscreen habit, begun early and maintained, will do more for the long-term appearance of skin than any supplement taken without it. This is not marketing copy. It is what the dermatology literature says, consistently and unambiguously. Within nutritional support for skin, the evidence base begins with the basics. Chronic dehydration visibly affects skin appearance, and adequate water intake, while not the miraculous skin treatment that popular culture sometimes claims, does support the hydration of all tissues including skin. The effect is real but modest. Skin hydration is also regulated internally by mechanisms that a slight increase in water intake cannot easily override, which is why drinking an extra glass of water per day does not produce dramatic changes in skin appearance. Vitamin C occupies a position of particular credibility in both topical and oral skincare. Its role in collagen synthesis is well established and has been confirmed repeatedly in the scientific literature. Vitamin C is required as a cofactor for two enzymes, prolyl hydroxylase and lysyl hydroxylase, that add the hydroxyproline and hydroxylysine residues to collagen's amino acid chain, residues that are essential for the formation of the triple helix and for the cross-linking that gives mature collagen its structural strength. In the absence of adequate vitamin C, collagen synthesis is impaired. In the presence of adequate vitamin C, which most people in developed countries eating varied diets have, additional supplementation probably does not dramatically increase synthesis further because the enzymes are already operating at capacity. This distinction between correcting a deficiency, which produces dramatic effects, and supplementing beyond adequacy, which produces modest effects, if any, applies to many of the nutritional factors associated with skin health. It is one of the most important distinctions in nutritional science, and one of the most consistently elided in supplement marketing, which tends to present the evidence for deficiency correction as evidence for supplementation in well-nourished people. Retinol and its derivatives, the vitamin A family, have the strongest topical evidence base of any cosmetic ingredient for skin aging. Prescription-strength tretinoin has been studied extensively and shown to increase collagen production in the dermis through retinoid receptor signaling, increase skin cell turnover, and produce measurable improvements in fine lines, skin texture, and pigmentation over periods of weeks to months. Over-the-counter retinol products produce similar effects at a slower pace and with less irritation than prescription retinoids. The mechanism is real, the effects are measurable, and the evidence is decades deep. Niacinamide, vitamin B3 in its amide form, has accumulated a strong body of evidence for several skin parameters, including barrier function, hyperpigmentation, and potentially collagen synthesis, though the last of these is still under investigation. Niacinamide is well tolerated by most skin types, inexpensive, and present in a wide range of products across price points. It lacks the marketing glamour of collagen, but has a more convincing evidence base for the specific claims made about it. The spectrum of ingredients with genuine skin evidence also includes ceramides for barrier repair, azelaic acid for hyperpigmentation and rosacea, and a class of peptides specifically designed for transcutaneous delivery, shorter chains of specific amino acids that have been shown to interact with skin receptors or penetrate the barrier, which are quite different from the collagen peptides in supplements and should not be confused with them despite the shared vocabulary. The peptide category in topical skincare is genuinely complex and includes some ingredients with credible evidence and some without, and navigating it requires the same careful reading of evidence quality that the supplement category demands. Hyaluronic acid, not a collagen product but often marketed alongside it, has good evidence for skin hydration when applied topically. Unlike collagen, hyaluronic acid molecules in the smaller molecular weight ranges do penetrate the upper layers of the skin, where they attract and retain water. The effects on skin appearance are real but temporary. Hyaluronic acid in topical products does not increase the body's own hyaluronic acid production, and the effect dissipates when application ceases. Oral hyaluronic acid supplementation has some preliminary evidence suggesting it may increase skin hydration from within, and the mechanism is somewhat more plausible than oral collagen, because the body does produce its own hyaluronic acid and may respond to supplementation with increased production, though the evidence is not yet definitive. Antioxidants, vitamin E, vitamin C, polyphenols from plant sources, have evidence for protecting existing collagen from the oxidative damage caused by UV radiation and pollution. They do not reverse existing aging, but may slow the rate at which it progresses, particularly in people with high environmental exposures. The skin benefits of a diet rich in fruits and vegetables are genuinely supported by epidemiological evidence, though isolating which specific compounds within that diet are responsible is difficult. Omega-3 fatty acids, found in fatty fish, walnuts, flaxseed, and in supplement form as fish oil, have evidence for anti-inflammatory effects that may benefit skin, particularly in conditions like eczema, where inflammatory pathways play a significant role. The evidence for omega-3 effects on the visible signs of aging in otherwise healthy skin is more limited but plausible, given omega-3's role in maintaining the lipid composition of cell membranes throughout the body, including the skin. These ingredients and habits do not have the cultural momentum of collagen. They do not fit as neatly into morning routine content. Vitamin C serum is less photographically appealing than a canister of premium marine collagen powder. A tube of Retinoid cannot be positioned on a kitchen counter without raising questions about whether a prescription is required. The evidence and the aesthetics do not always align, and in a market where aesthetics and narrative drive purchasing decisions, the gap between what is supported and what is purchased is not surprising. The woman in the department store in 1987 was not wrong to want something for her skin. She was not wrong to look for it. She was simply presented with a choice between what the science supported and what the marketing offered, and given no tools to distinguish between them. That same choice is presented daily to anyone who opens a browser or a social media app and encounters content about skin health. The tools for navigating it, the capacity to read a methodology section, to look up a conflict of interest disclosure, to ask what dose, what population, what duration, what outcome, what comparison, what funding are available but are not taught, are free but are not promoted, are powerful but are less emotionally compelling than the before and after photograph. The evidence sits in the journals. The journals are open. The question is simply whether anyone has time to find them. At the end of all of this, having moved through the biology and the history and the clinical trials and the funding structures and the marketing machinery and the small facts in their drawers, there is a practical question that most people listening to this are probably sitting with: should I take it? And if so, what should I take, and how much should I pay for it, and how will I know if it is working? The answer is not a simple yes or no, because the science does not provide a simple yes or no, and providing one on behalf of a science that has not provided it would be dishonest in a way that the supplement marketing already is. What the science does provide is a framework for decision-making that the marketing obscures. The first element of that framework is harm assessment. Hydrolyzed collagen supplements are, in the doses typically recommended, safe for the vast majority of people. They are protein, and the concerns about collagen supplementation are concerns about efficacy, not safety. People with phenylketonuria, a rare metabolic disorder that requires limiting phenylalanine intake, should note that collagen is low in phenylalanine relative to other proteins, and is sometimes recommended as a dietary protein source in this condition, though this is a medical question rather than a supplement question. People with seafood allergies should avoid marine collagen. People who are pregnant should discuss any supplementation with a healthcare provider. For everyone else, the supplement is not a risk in any meaningful sense. The second element is benefit probability. Based on the available evidence, the most plausible benefit from regular hydrolyzed collagen supplementation in a healthy adult is a modest improvement in skin hydration over a period of weeks to months. The evidence for this outcome, while largely industry-funded, is relatively consistent. The evidence for improved skin elasticity is more variable. The evidence for increased dermal collagen density is least established. Any expectation of a dramatic, visible difference in skin appearance, the kind of transformation implied by before and after photography, is not supported by the literature. For joint health, the evidence is more consistent for people who already have osteoarthritis, or who undertake high volumes of physical exercise that creates joint stress. Several reasonably well-designed trials show meaningful improvements in pain and function measures in these populations. The evidence for joint health benefits in people without existing joint conditions or unusual mechanical stress is much weaker. The third element is dose and duration. The trials that have shown positive results have generally used doses of 5 to 15 grams of hydrolyzed collagen per day, consumed consistently for at least 8 weeks. Products that provide 2 or 3 grams per serving and position themselves at the premium end of the market may be providing doses below those studied in positive trials. This matters because there is no evidence that the relationship between dose and effect is linear, and taking less than the dose used in trials means consuming a product whose benefit at that dose has not been studied. Duration matters because the biological processes that the supplement is hypothesized to stimulate, fibroblast activation, collagen synthesis, changes in dermal architecture, operate on a timescale of weeks to months, not days. People who take a supplement for 2 weeks and assess whether it is working are not giving the mechanism sufficient time to produce a measurable effect, if the mechanism operates at all. The fourth element is comparison shopping at the ingredient level rather than the brand level. The core ingredient in most collagen supplements, hydrolyzed bovine or marine collagen peptides, does not improve in quality at higher price points. What varies between price points is the marketing spend, the packaging, the brand positioning, and the addition of co-ingredients that may or may not have independent evidence for their claimed benefits. A consumer who wants to know whether hydrolyzed collagen has any effect on their skin should purchase the product that provides the relevant dose at the lowest per gram cost of pure collagen, without paying a premium for botanical additions whose evidence is thinner than the collagens. Third-party testing certification is worth seeking. NSF International, Informed Sport, and USP certification indicates that the product has been independently verified to contain what the label says at the stated dose without undisclosed contaminants. For supplements consumed regularly over long periods, quality assurance in this form is worth a small price premium over uncertified alternatives. The fifth element is context. A collagen supplement consumed without a concurrent sunscreen habit, by a smoker or by someone with significantly inadequate dietary protein overall, will be doing its hypothetical work in an environment that makes detecting any benefit very difficult. The factors that most powerfully affect skin aging, UV exposure, smoking, protein adequacy, sleep, chronic stress, have far larger effect sizes than any supplement. Addressing the largest factors first is not glamorous marketing advice, but it is what the science supports. The sixth element is honest expectation. If a person takes a collagen supplement and finds that their skin feels more hydrated and their joints feel more comfortable after 3 months of consistent use, they are experiencing something that is real to them and that the literature does not refute. The supplement may be responsible. The placebo effect may be responsible. The additional attention paid to the skin as a result of the supplement habit may be responsible. The coincidence of other positive changes occurring simultaneously may be responsible. These possibilities cannot be distinguished without a control group, and a person's experience is not a clinical trial. What they can be confident of is that the experience is real, that the supplement has not harmed them, and that continuing to use it if they experience benefit is a reasonable choice. What they should not be confident of is that the benefit, if it is occurring, is specifically due to the collagen peptides acting on their fibroblasts in the manner described on the label. The mechanism and the experience may or may not be the same thing, and demanding certainty about which one is responsible for a positive experience is perhaps too high a bar for a decision about a supplement. The well-informed consumer is not necessarily the consumer who does not buy the supplement. She is the consumer who buys it, if she buys it, without illusion about what is established and what is hoped, who reads the evidence with a settled awareness of its limitations, who does not expect the $9 billion to have been spent on what the $9 billion implies. She's sitting with the information now. The canister is on the shelf. The morning is somewhere in the future, waiting to be navigated. Whatever she decides will be, in the best available sense, an informed decision. That is what this story was for. Academic research is funded by someone. This is not a scandal. It is simply the organization of science in a world where science requires equipment, participants, researchers, and time, all of which cost money, and where the sources of that money are finite and carry their own interests and priorities. Understanding who funds what research and how funding shapes what gets studied and what gets published is not a conspiracy theory. It is a well-developed field of academic inquiry with its own journals, its own methodology, and its own uncomfortable findings. The relationship between industry funding and research outcomes in pharmaceutical and nutrition research has been studied with some rigour over the past 3 decades. A meta-analysis published in the British Medical Journal in 2007 examined studies of soft drink, juice, and milk consumption, and found that industry-funded studies were 4 to 8 times more likely to find results favourable to the funder's interests than independently funded studies of the same interventions. A systematic review published in PLOS Medicine found similar patterns across a range of nutritional research. industry funding does not in every case produce biased research. But across the population of industry-funded studies, the pattern is consistent and measurable. The mechanisms by which funding influences outcomes are varied, and do not all require intentional misconduct. The most straightforward is study design. A company funding a trial of its own product has significant influence over the research protocol, the dose used, the duration, the population selected, the outcomes measured, the comparison condition. These choices can be made in good faith but with an unconscious optimism that orients every parameter toward the conditions most likely to produce a positive result. The population selection matters particularly. Collagen trials have generally enrolled participants who are healthy adults with no skin conditions, typically in the age range of 35 to 60, and often women who are more likely to show measurable improvements in skin parameters from any intervention, because they are more likely to be actively losing collagen relative to men of similar age. A trial in this population, using sensitive instruments to measure small changes over 12 weeks, will have a better chance of detecting an effect than a trial in a broader, more heterogeneous population over a longer period. The outcome selection matters equally. Studies that measure skin hydration are more likely to show positive effects of collagen supplementation than studies that measure dermal collagen density, because hydration is more immediately responsive to any protein-containing intervention, and because the measurement techniques are more sensitive. A company choosing which outcome to make primary in its trial design has, in making that choice, already shaped the probability of a positive result. The comparison condition, what the placebo contains, is another lever. A placebo that's nutritionally inert will produce a larger apparent treatment effect than a placebo containing protein or amino acids at a comparable dose. Some collagen trials have used placebos containing no protein at all, comparing the collagen group not against another protein source, but against nothing, which inflates the apparent advantage of collagen relative to what a more ecologically valid comparison, a protein-matched placebo, might show. This point is particularly important because one of the foundational questions about collagen supplements, whether their effects, if any, are due to the specific collagen-derived peptides, or simply to the additional protein and amino acids they provide, has not been adequately answered by the existing trial literature. Most trials have not included a protein match comparison. They have compared collagen against nothing, which tells you whether collagen is better than nothing, but not whether collagen is better than eating a comparable amount of any other protein. This distinction matters enormously for understanding the mechanism and the value of the product specifically. The publication decisions made after a trial is complete are a further source of influence. The term publication bias describes the tendency for positive results to be published more readily than null or negative results, and it affects all of biomedical research, not only supplement research. But the absence of trial registration requirements in the supplement industry means that there is no easy way for systematic reviewers to determine how many unpublished null results exist for any given ingredient. The published literature is therefore an optimistic sample of the full research. Within the published literature, the writing and framing of results is also shaped by the interests of the funder. Authors of industry-funded studies are more likely to interpret ambiguous results favourably, more likely to describe moderate effect sizes as clinically meaningful, and more likely to downplay limitations in the conclusion sections of their papers than authors of independently funded research. These tendencies have been documented in the methodological literature and do not require imputing bad faith to individual researchers. They are the product of the psychological environment in which research is conducted when one party has a financial interest in the outcome. The collagen supplement industry has responded to concerns about the quality of its research base in ways that vary from genuinely constructive to strategically cosmetic. Some of the larger supplement manufacturers have invested in independently designed and executed trials, pre-registered with clinical trial registries, using protein-matched placebos and multiple outcome measures, conducted by academic researchers with no financial relationship to the company. These trials are expensive and represent a genuine commitment to answering the scientific question honestly. They're also a minority of the research conducted. A more common response has been the creation of quasi-independent research infrastructure, scientific advisory boards, research institutes, or academic partnerships that provide a veneer of independence while maintaining a financial relationship with the company whose products are being studied. These arrangements are disclosed, usually in small print at the end of publications, but the disclosure does not always penetrate to the consumer communications that cite the research. There is also the phenomenon of the researcher who's built a career within the collagen supplement space, conducting multiple studies of different products, accumulating a publication record that makes them an authority on the subject, and whose financial relationships with industry are disclosed per publication, but whose overall research agenda has been substantially shaped by industry funding. This is not a phenomenon unique to collagen research. It is a characteristic of many applied nutrition research areas where independent funding is scarce, and industry funding is the realistic alternative to not doing research at all. The people who sit on the other side of the research equation, the consumers who buy the products based partly on the research, generally do not read the methodology sections of the studies. They encounter the research filtered through press releases, health journalist articles, influencer citations, and brand website summaries, each of which strips away another layer of context until what remains is the finding, shorn of its qualifications, its limitations, and its conflict of interest disclosures. A finding that collagen supplementation significantly improved skin hydration in a 12-week trial of 62 women aged 35 to 55, conducted by researchers who received funding from the company that makes the supplement, compared against a zero-protein placebo, using a self-report outcome as primary measure, becomes clinically proven to improve skin. The distance between the two descriptions is the distance between the science and the $9 billion. There is a dimension of skin health that the supplement industry, for obvious reasons, does not emphasize. The things that are free and require no purchase and have considerably stronger evidence than any supplement currently on the market. Of these, sleep is perhaps the most significant and the most overlooked in the context of skin discussions that tend to gravitate toward what one can buy. The relationship between sleep and skin is not metaphorical. It is not the vague connection implied by the phrase beauty sleep, which has been in use since at least the mid-19th century and carries a connotation of folk wisdom rather than biological mechanism. It is a specific, documented set of processes that occur during sleep and that have measurable consequences for skin appearance and skin health. During sleep, particularly during the deep, slow-wave phases of sleep that dominate the first half of the night, the pituitary gland releases the majority of the human growth hormone that is produced each day. Human growth hormone is a potent stimulus for cellular repair and regeneration throughout the body, including in skin. It stimulates the activity of fibroblasts, the same cells that collagen supplements hypothesize to reach through peptide signaling, and promotes collagen synthesis as part of the general tissue repair that the sleeping body performs. A single night of poor sleep produces measurable changes in facial appearance that independent assessors can identify reliably. Studies in which participants were photographed after adequate and inadequate sleep, then shown to raters who did not know the condition, found consistent and significant differences in rated attractiveness, healthiness, and apparent fatigue. The skin shows sleep deprivation visibly, in puffiness, in colour irregularity, in a reduction of the subtle textural quality that adequate rest produces. Chronic sleep deprivation, the kind that accumulates over weeks and months of inadequate sleep, which is the condition of a substantial proportion of adults in developed countries, produces chronic effects on skin that are more significant than any supplement currently in clinical trial. Chronic sleep restriction increases cortisol levels, and elevated cortisol has direct effects on the skin. It stimulates the production of matrix metalloproteinases, enzymes that break down collagen in the dermis. It is, in the most straightforward possible sense, anti-collagen. A supplement that is hypothetically stimulating collagen production, while chronic stress and inadequate sleep are actively degrading it, is swimming against a stronger current than it can manage. The collagen synthesis that occurs during sleep depends on the same amino acid precursors that collagen supplements provide. But the synthesis occurs in response to growth hormone signaling, not in response to dietary abundance of amino acids. Additional glycine and proline in the bloodstream do not, by themselves, tell the fibroblast to increase its collagen production. The signal for that comes from the growth hormone pulse that sleep produces. The raw material and the instruction are both needed, and the instruction, the growth hormone signal, comes from adequate sleep, not from a supplement. This does not mean that collagen supplements are useless in the presence of good sleep. If the peptide signaling mechanism operates as hypothesized, adequate sleep and collagen supplementation might both contribute to skin health through different pathways, but it does mean that someone prioritizing collagen supplements over sleep quality is spending money on the secondary intervention while neglecting the primary one. The same logic applies to stress management, which affects cortisol in the same way chronic sleep deprivation does. Cortisol's effects on the skin are well documented in dermatology. The skin flares of eczema and psoriasis that reliably follow periods of significant psychological stress are the most visible manifestation of a systemic relationship between stress hormones and skin inflammation. For women with stress-related skin concerns, a supplement that addresses the downstream consequences of chronic cortisol elevation, while doing nothing about the cortisol elevation itself, is addressing the right problem from the wrong end. Exercise has documented effects on skin that operate through several mechanisms. Increased circulation during exercise delivers nutrients and oxygen to skin tissue and clears waste products from the extracellular matrix. The acute growth hormone release that accompanies intense exercise provides some of the same stimulus for tissue repair that sleep provides. The anti-inflammatory effects of regular moderate exercise reduce the systemic inflammation that contributes to skin aging. None of these benefits require a supplement. Diet, and not in the form of specific supplements but in the broader pattern of food consumed over months and years, has well-established effects on skin appearance that the supplement industry tends to extract into individual ingredients without acknowledging the context. A diet high in refined carbohydrates and added sugars contributes to glycation of collagen, a process by which glucose molecules attach to collagen fibers and cross-link them in ways that reduce their flexibility and accelerate skin aging. A diet high in antioxidant-rich plant foods, vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, provides the free radical scavenging that protects existing collagen from oxidative damage. The particular irony of the skin supplement moment is that it is occurring simultaneously with the processed food moment, a period in which the average diet in most developed countries is simultaneously more processed, more glycemic, and lower in dietary antioxidants than at any previous point in history, and in which the supplement industry has positioned itself as the solution to problems that better food would address more fundamentally. The supplement takes up residence in the kitchen alongside the foods that are quietly undermining the skin that the supplement is trying to support. Sleep, sunscreen, adequate protein, abundant plant foods, stress management that is sustainable rather than ritual. These are the interventions with the strongest evidence bases for skin health, and they are the interventions that require the most sustained behavior change and produce the least photogenic morning routine content. A canister of powder on a counter is a more tractable intervention than 8 hours of sleep in a culture that consistently undervalues sleep, and more tractable than changing one's relationship to chronic stress in a world that is reliably producing it. The supplement fills the space where the behavior change should be, and this is not only true for collagen. It is the operating premise of most of the supplement industry, that the consumer wants to do something good for their body, but faces significant constraints on what they can do, and that the supplement can be that something, the action taken in the brief window of morning agency before the day, swamps the intention. The window is real, the intention is good, the evidence would prefer a different occupant, but the canister is there, and it is open, and the powder is dissolving in the coffee, and the morning is happening. The skin story is not the only story. Parallel to the beauty collagen category, and considerably older, is the joint health collagen category, supplements marketed for osteoarthritis, for athletic recovery, for the maintenance of cartilage, and the reduction of joint discomfort in people whose knees have developed opinions about stairs. The collagen relevant to joint health is primarily type 2 collagen, which makes up 50 to 60% of the dry weight of cartilage, and is the structural protein most directly involved in cartilage's capacity to absorb and distribute mechanical load. Type 2 collagen is distinct in structure from the type 1 collagen that dominates skin and bone, and is found in different proportions in different collagen supplement sources. It is the primary collagen type in chicken cartilage, and is the basis for undernatured type 2 collagen supplements, a specific form of the ingredient that has developed its own clinical literature. The mechanism proposed for joint benefit from collagen supplementation is similar in structure to the skin mechanism, but involves a different target tissue and a different proposed signaling pathway. Collagen-derived peptides in the bloodstream are hypothesized to reach cartilage tissue and signal chondrocytes, the cells responsible for cartilage maintenance, in ways that stimulate increased production of cartilage matrix components. The hypothesis is plausible and has support from in vitro studies showing that collagen peptides can stimulate chondrocyte activity. The human evidence for joint benefits of collagen supplementation is, like the skin evidence, varied in quality but somewhat more extensive, because osteoarthritis affects a large population, creates significant measurable disability, and has attracted both industry and some academic research funding over a longer period. The clinical picture is more developed, and the picture it shows is genuinely interesting. Several trials have found that hydrolyzed collagen supplementation in people with osteoarthritis, particularly of the knee, which is the most studied joint, produces improvements in pain scores and functional ability measures over periods of 3 to 6 months, with effect sizes comparable to some over-the-counter pain relief approaches, and, in some trials, superior to placebo by margins that are clinically meaningful. A systematic review published in Rheumatology International in 2019 pooled data from multiple trials, and concluded that while the evidence quality was moderate, limited by small sample sizes and largely industry funding, the consistency of positive findings was sufficient to suggest a genuine effect. The most interesting evidence comes from a specific formulation, undenatured type 2 collagen, sometimes labelled UC2. This is a preparation of type 2 collagen that is deliberately not hydrolyzed. It is kept in its native, partially intact form, which exposes it to a different biological mechanism from the peptide signaling hypothesis. The proposed mechanism for UC2 is oral immune tolerance induction. The partially intact collagen molecules, encountered by the immune system in the gut-associated lymphoid tissue, induce a tolerogenic immune response that dampens the low-grade autoimmune component of osteoarthritis, in which the body's immune system is partially attacking its own cartilage. This mechanism, immunological rather than nutritional, is distinct from anything proposed for hydrolyzed collagen and, if it operates as described, would not require the collagen to survive digestion intact or reach cartilage tissue in molecular form. The immune interaction in the gut would produce the downstream effect systemically. Several trials of UC2, including some with independent funding, have found significant improvements in osteoarthritis pain and function, with effect sizes comparable to glucosamine and chondroitin, the most widely used supplements for joint health. Glucosamine and chondroitin are themselves an instructive case in supplement evidence. These two compounds, a sugar amino acid combination and a sulfated polysaccharide respectively, are naturally present in cartilage and have been among the most widely sold supplements for joint health for 3 decades. The early evidence was promising. A large independently funded trial called the DSHEA trial, published in the New England Journal of Medicine in 2006, included over 1,600 patients with knee osteoarthritis and found that in the overall population, glucosamine and chondroitin did not significantly outperform placebo, though a subgroup of patients with moderate to severe pain did show some benefit. The GATE trial is a case study in what happens when a well-funded, independent, rigorous trial is conducted on a supplement with a large commercial market and a pre-existing evidence base built primarily on smaller industry-funded studies. The large trial did not confirm what the smaller trials had suggested. The supplement industry responded by questioning the trial's methodology, emphasizing the subgroup finding, and continuing to sell the products at existing volumes. Consumers continued to buy them. The products continued to work for some people, or to appear to, because placebo effects in pain conditions are substantial, and the subjective experience of improved joint comfort is real regardless of its mechanism. What the glucosamine and chondroitin story illustrates about the collagen joint health story is the difficulty of conducting definitive trials in nutritional supplement research, and the way that the supplement industry uses this difficulty, the genuine complexity and expense of gold standard research, to maintain commercial space for products whose evidence base remains ambiguous. The people who take collagen for their joints are not foolish. Many of them report genuine relief, and relief is real regardless of its mechanism. The placebo response to pain interventions can produce meaningful changes in pain perception that are neurologically genuine, not imaginary. Some individuals may respond to collagen supplementation through mechanisms that small trials cannot reliably detect. The absence of conclusive evidence is not evidence of absence of effect. It is evidence of the state of the research. What the evidence does clearly establish is that collagen supplementation is not appropriate as a substitute for adequate medical management of osteoarthritis, that the claims made on some products about reversing cartilage damage significantly exceed what the evidence supports, and that the improvement in joint comfort experienced by some users is most plausibly explained by a combination of genuine biological effect, placebo response, and the natural variability in osteoarthritis symptoms over time. The knee on the stairs decides what it will decide. The cartilage does its slow work of maintenance and gradual depletion. Somewhere in a supplement factory, the chicken sternums arrive and the extraction begins, and somewhere else a researcher is designing a trial that will not be completed for 3 years and will be published in a journal that most people whose knees are already troubling them will never read. The supplement is taken, the stairs are climbed or not climbed, the body keeps its own counsel. The $9 billion is not evenly distributed. The global collagen supplement market is concentrated in specific regions, driven by specific cultural and demographic conditions, and its growth trajectory varies considerably, depending on where you are standing when you look at it. Japan remains the world's largest single market for beauty-oriented collagen products, despite being the category's origin point, and therefore having had the longest time to move through the arc from novelty to commodity. The Japanese market is characterized by high penetration of collagen products across age groups, a high degree of consumer sophistication about the ingredient, and a product innovation rate that continues to produce new formats. Collagen enriched sake, collagen natto, collagen in the protein supplement drinks that have become popular among Japanese women who do strength training. The Japanese consumer is, on average, more realistic about what the supplement does than her counterpart in markets where the category is newer, which perhaps explains why the market continues to grow through incremental improvement and format innovation, rather than through the kind of transformational promise that drives early category adoption. South Korea is perhaps the most dynamically growing market for beauty nutrition globally, driven by a beauty culture that is unusually sophisticated, unusually medically informed, and unusually willing to invest in appearance maintenance as a routine and unembarrassed practice. The Korean beauty industry, K-beauty in global parlance, has had extraordinary influence on skincare practice globally, in the decade since it became a significant export phenomenon, and its embrace of collagen supplementation as part of a multimodal skin maintenance approach has given the ingredient additional credibility with consumers in markets where Korean beauty is influential. The collagen drink formats that are most popular in Korea, small, elegant, flavoured, shot glass-sized, have appeared in markets from Southeast Asia to Germany to the United States in formats that are recognisably derived from the Korean prototype. China has the world's largest potential market for beauty supplements and is in the early stages of the adoption curve that Japan completed decades ago. The rising affluence of the Chinese middle class, combined with a beauty culture that has historically valorized a specific aesthetic of youthful luminous skin and a healthcare system that remains under-resourced relative to the population's growing health concerns, creates conditions that are commercially very favorable for the supplement category. Chinese consumers have historically been willing to pay premium prices for products associated with safety, purity, and international brand credibility, a tendency that creates both opportunities and complications for the collagen supplement market, where quality control varies enormously and where the prestige of foreign brands is an important purchasing driver. The United States and Western Europe are mature markets in the product lifecycle sense, markets where the category is well established, where the major brands have built substantial consumer franchises, and where growth depends more on retention and expansion of the existing consumer base than on converting new users. The dramatic growth rates of the late 2000s and 10s, when the beauty collagen category was expanding by 30 or 40% annually in American retail, have moderated. The market continues to grow, but at rates more consistent with a maturing category than an emerging one. The fastest current growth markets are in South and Southeast Asia, India, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, the Philippines, where a rapidly expanding middle class is adopting Western supplement consumption patterns, while also drawing on traditional local practices around beauty nutrition. The collagen supplement in these markets sits alongside traditional beauty foods that have always been part of the dietary landscape. Fish skin dishes, collagen-rich bone broths consumed as part of everyday cooking, gelatinous desserts that have long been associated in popular understanding with skin health. The supplement arrives not as a foreign innovation, but as a scientific upgrade to an existing cultural practice which accelerates adoption considerably. The Latin American market is emerging with strong growth drivers in Brazil and Mexico, where urbanization and increasing disposable income are combining with a beauty culture of significant commercial weight. Brazil is particularly interesting given its simultaneous role as a major supplier of bovine collagen to global supplement manufacturers and as an emerging consumer market for the finished products derived from that supply chain. The Middle East and North Africa represent a market with specific characteristics relevant to the collagen category. The Muslim consumer base's requirement for halal-certified products has driven the development of halal-certified marine collagen and plant-based collagen booster formulations, and several brands have built significant market positions in this region, specifically on the basis of halal certification combined with beauty efficacy claims. The region's high proportion of young, digitally connected consumers who follow wellness and beauty content from global social media creates a particularly receptive audience for influencer-driven supplement marketing. What the global geography of collagen supplement consumption reveals is something about the nature of beauty aspiration and its relationship to economic development. The category appears to grow as markets develop to a specific stage, not in very low-income markets where basic nutrition is the priority, but in emerging middle-class markets where disposable income exists, where media consumption is high, where beauty aspiration has become culturally mainstream, and where the vocabulary of nutrition science is beginning to be incorporated into beauty decision-making. This growth pattern is not incidental. It is the pattern of most of the supplement industry's global expansion, following economic development and media penetration into markets that are newly able to afford the aspirational categories that richer markets established first. The hope that drives collagen supplement purchase is not culture-specific. It is recognizable across every market in which the category grows. The specific anxieties are local. The beauty ideal is not the same in Seoul as in São Paulo. The specific features that aging is understood to affect first are culturally inflected. But the underlying wish that consuming the right thing might keep those features in the condition one wants them in is entirely universal. The global market means that the $9 billion is supported by a supply chain and a regulatory landscape that are fragmented in ways that affect quality and consistency. A supplement sold in the United States may contain collagen processed in China from Brazilian hide. A supplement sold in South Korea may contain Japanese marine collagen peptides formulated in Korea. The finished product in any country may have been tested to different standards, under different regulatory frameworks with different quality assurance practices than the label implies. The consumer in any of these markets is making a purchase decision with limited information about the full supply chain of the product she is buying. She knows the brand name, she knows the country where the brand is headquartered, if she has looked. She does not know the processing facility where the collagen was hydrolyzed, the quality control standards applied there, or the testing that was or was not conducted before the powder arrived in the canister on the shelf. The $9 billion is, in this light, a measure of how large a market can become when the product is safe enough to cause no obvious harm, when the claims are plausible enough to generate trial, and when the experience of using the product is pleasant enough to generate repeat purchase, regardless of whether the mechanism on the label is operating in the bodies of the people who buy it. It is also, in the most generous reading, a measure of how much of the human desire for health and longevity, and the continuation of one's capacity to inhabit a body that moves through the world as one would like it to move, a desire that is real and profound and entirely reasonable, is currently finding its expression in the supplement aisle. The geography of hope covers a great deal of ground. It includes every kitchen counter where a canister sits, every convenience store refrigerator where a beauty drink waits in the cold blue light, every pharmacy shelf in every city in the world where someone is trying to decide between the one with the scientific name and the one with the better packaging and the one the influencer she trusts was holding last week. The hope is everywhere. The collagen follows it, patient and white, dissolving into whatever liquid is offered. $9 billion is a number that resolves, when you try to visualize it, into abstraction. It is approximately the annual GDP of a small country. It is approximately the annual revenue of several major pharmaceutical companies. It is the amount spent globally in 2023 on collagen supplements, powders, drinks, capsules, beauty bars, fortified foods, collagen-enhanced everything. by people who mostly wanted their skin to look better, or their joints to hurt less, or to feel that they were doing something positive for themselves in the quiet minutes of the morning. The 9 billion is distributed across a supply chain that begins with the slaughterhouse and the fish processing facility and ends at the gym bag and the kitchen counter and the bathroom shelf. Along the way, it passes through extraction facilities and drying plants and encapsulation lines and label printers and marketing agencies and influencer management platforms and logistics companies and retail distributors and the particular category of consultancy that exists to tell supplement companies what claims they can and cannot make in which jurisdictions. The companies that make up the collagen supplement industry range from enormous multinationals with pharmaceutical research capabilities to small direct-to-consumer brands operating out of contract manufacturing facilities with no research infrastructure of their own. The former group has the resources to conduct and publish genuine research. The latter group largely relies on the existing literature, typically the literature produced by the larger companies and their academic partners, to substantiate its own claims on the principle that the general evidence for hydrolyzed collagen peptides can be invoked for any product containing them, regardless of the specific formulation, dose, or quality. The regulatory landscape the industry operates within has remained broadly permissive in its major markets. The United States continues to operate under the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act framework. Established in 1994, the Federal Trade Commission has in recent years increased its attention to health claims on supplement labels and in advertising, issuing guidance that requires health claims to be substantiated by competent and reliable scientific evidence. Several supplement companies have received warning letters regarding claims that did not meet this standard, and some have been required to modify or retract advertising. But the enforcement capacity of the FTC relative to the volume of claims being made is limited, and the legal standard for substantiation, competent and reliable scientific evidence, is interpreted differently by a supplement company's legal team and by a clinical epidemiologist. In Europe, the EFSA review process has rejected or significantly narrowed many collagen-related health claims, and the permitted language in European markets is more restricted than in the United States. Several large collagen supplement companies have developed two versions of their marketing, one for Europe, which is careful to the point of minimalism in its claims, and one for the United States and other markets, which is considerably more expansive. The same product, in the same tin, makes different promises depending on where it's sold. The most significant recent development in the broader skin and appearance supplement market is the emergence of GLP-1 receptor agonists, drugs originally developed for type 2 diabetes that have demonstrated remarkable efficacy for weight loss and have been associated in clinical observation, if not yet in systematic study, with a phenomenon the internet has called Ozempic face, the facial hollowing and loss of fullness that occurs when significant amounts of weight are lost rapidly, leaving skin that was previously supported by subcutaneous fat without the structural underpinning it had acquired over years. The emergence of GLP-1 drugs has created a new market context for collagen supplements. Some brands have begun positioning collagen not merely as a skin anti-aging supplement, but as a support for people undergoing GLP-1 treatment. The argument being that rapid weight loss increases protein needs, that adequate protein intake, including collagen-derived amino acids, may help preserve lean mass, and that collagen specifically may help support skin elasticity as the face and body change shape. The evidence for these specific claims is not developed, but the emotional resonance of the positioning, collagen as an ally in managing the cosmetic consequences of a pharmaceutical intervention, is significant. The GLP-1 moment has also prompted a broader conversation about the relationship between body composition, diet, and skin appearance that has accelerated demand for other skin health supplements, biotin, hyaluronic acid, plant-derived antioxidants, and what the industry calls beauty from within formulations that combine multiple ingredients under the banner of comprehensive skin support. The collagen category has benefited from this rising tide. Consumers who are thinking about their skin as a system, affected by what they eat and drink and take, are receptive to a product that positions itself as the foundational ingredient of that system. The science is moving, more slowly than the market, toward greater clarity. Several large, well-designed, independently funded trials are currently underway in dermatology and sports medicine. The results, expected in the next 3 to 5 years, will likely produce a more differentiated picture than either of the enthusiasts or the skeptics currently hold. suggesting genuine effects in some populations, with some formulations for some outcomes, and no effects or modest effects for others, and illuminating the specific biological conditions under which the mechanism operates, and those under which it does not. When that picture arrives, it will probably not change the collagen supplement market significantly. The pattern observed in other supplement categories, where large, rigorous, negative or ambiguous trials are absorbed by the industry without dramatic commercial consequence, suggests that the market is not primarily driven by the state of the clinical evidence. It is driven by the state of the cultural narrative, and the cultural narrative around collagen has too much invested in it, too much infrastructure, too many morning routine videos, too many influencer relationships, too many loyal consumers who have been taking it for years and believe in it, to be significantly disrupted by a peer-reviewed paper. This is not cynicism. It is simply an observation about how information travels in markets and about the particular challenge of communicating nuance in a media environment optimized for simplicity and emotional resonance. The peer-reviewed paper is accurate. The morning routine video is compelling. The $9 billion is where those two things meet and one of them wins. The industry continues. The processing plants run their enzymatic reactions. The drying chambers turn liquid into powder. The canisters are sealed and shipped. The labels make their careful claims. The morning routines are filmed and posted and watched. Somewhere, in a clinic in a European city, participants in a double-blind trial are taking capsules that are either active product or carefully matched placebo, and neither they nor the researchers distributing the capsules know which. The results of that trial will be submitted for peer review in approximately 3 years. The paper will appear in a dermatology journal with an impact factor that most people have never heard of. The conclusion section will be careful and hedged and honest about what the trial can and cannot say. It will be the most useful document in this entire story. Nobody will read it over their morning coffee. Every supplement category has a successor. The natural arc of the ingredient cycle runs from discovery, a finding, a mechanism, a plausible hypothesis, through scaling, through peak, and into the plateau where the category becomes ordinary, and market growth depends on finding new consumers rather than new converts. Before the plateau arrives, the industry is already looking for the next thing, the next word that will carry the same combination of biological credibility, cultural resonance, and commercial momentum that collagen carried in the 2000s. The search for the next collagen, which is to say the next ingredient with a compelling mechanism, a partially developed evidence base, and the capacity to be made into a $9 billion category through the application of marketing and influencer distributions is ongoing and has several candidates. Spermidine is one of them. A polyamine found in fermented foods, wheat germ, and aged cheese, spermidine has attracted research attention for its role in autophagy, the process by which cells break down and recycle damaged components. Autophagy is implicated in longevity in animal models, and spermidine supplementation has extended lifespan in several organisms from yeast to flies to mice. Human trials are in early stages. The word autophagy entered popular wellness discourse in the late 2000s on the back of the Nobel Prize awarded in 2016 for autophagy research, and the supplement industry was watching carefully. Spermidine supplements now exist. The evidence base is where the collagen evidence base was in approximately 1995. NAD+ precursors, compounds like nicotinamide riboside and nicotinamide mononucleotide, are further along this arc, having been marketed aggressively since approximately 2017 on the basis of research suggesting that declining NAD+ levels are implicated in cellular aging, and that restoring NAD+ through precursor supplementation might slow or reverse aspects of aging at the cellular level. The research underpinning these products is conducted by serious scientists at serious institutions. The leap from cellular mechanism to visible anti-aging benefit in healthy humans is, at the current state of the evidence, substantial. The marketing has not always acknowledged this gap. Several $100 million of sales per year have not found it necessary to. Peptide cosmetics, topical products containing specific short peptides designed to interact with skin receptors or penetrate the barrier in ways that large molecules cannot, represent the next iteration of the topical collagen story. Peptide creams and serums have been in the market since the early 2000s, but the category has expanded dramatically as the cost of peptide synthesis has decreased, and the capacity of the formulary chemist to engineer smaller, more targeted molecules has increased. Some topical peptides have genuine evidence for specific effects. Matrixyl, argyroline, and their successors have been studied in ways that the original topical collagen products were not. Others are less well supported and rely on the general credibility that the peptide category has accumulated. Exosome therapy, the use of extracellular vesicles derived from stem cells, administered topically or by injection, is the current frontier of cosmetic anti-aging intervention, and the category that most closely resembles the collagen injectable moment of the 1980s in its combination of genuine biological mechanism and premature clinical confidence. Exosomes contain growth factors, microRNA, and signaling molecules that may genuinely stimulate tissue repair and regeneration. They are currently sold in a largely unregulated context, in products whose manufacturing standards are inconsistent and whose specific contents are often not verified. The FDA has raised concerns about exosome products marketed with disease treatment claims. The category is, in the estimation of researchers who study it, somewhere between 5 and 15 years from the kind of evidence base that would justify confident recommendation. All of these categories share the structural features of the early collagen supplement market: plausible mechanism, preliminary evidence, enthusiastic adoption, inadequate regulatory oversight, and a media distribution system that has moved far faster than the science. All of them will generate 9-digit or 10-digit markets before the evidence base catches up with the marketing. Some will eventually be validated by independent research. Some will not. Most will occupy a middle ground where the honest summary is the same one that applies to collagen today. Something, probably for some people, in some formulations, under some conditions, to a degree that the marketing does not accurately represent. This is not a counsel of despair. It is a description of how science progresses in areas where the commercial interest outpaces the research capacity, and where the regulatory environment does not require the research to be completed before the product is sold. It is the environment the supplement consumer inhabits, and has always inhabited, and will continue to inhabit regardless of which ingredient is on the label. The skills for navigating it are consistent across categories. Who funded the study? How many participants? How long did it last? What was the comparison condition? What was the primary outcome? What did the methodology section say about limitations? What do the conflict of interest disclosures say about the researcher's relationships with the company whose product was studied? These questions apply to the collagen literature. They apply equally to the NAD+ literature and the Spermidine literature and whatever will follow them. They are not difficult questions. They require no advanced scientific training. They require only the willingness to read past the abstract, past the press release, past the influencer's endorsement, past the label, to the part of the story where the researchers themselves describe what they found and what they did not find and what remains to be determined. The part of the story that the industry would prefer you not reach. The part that will send you to sleep eventually, with an accurate picture of where the evidence is and where the hope is and how large the space between them remains. The next thing is already in development. The clinical trials have not yet been registered. The morning routine that will feature it is not yet filmed. The canister design is somewhere in a creative brief. The word that will carry it into a new $9 billion market is sitting in a laboratory somewhere, waiting for someone to recognize that it can be borrowed, and it can be sold, and it can be consumed every morning by millions of people who will feel, for as long as the story holds, that they are doing something right. The scientific story of collagen supplementation is not finished. The most honest thing one can say about the current evidence base is that it is early, that it is improving, and that the next 10 years will likely produce a clearer picture than the previous 30 have offered. The tools available to researchers studying skin biology have improved substantially, and several of these improvements are being applied to questions about supplement efficacy in ways that may eventually resolve the ambiguities that the current literature cannot. Confocal reflectance microscopy, which allows imaging of skin structures to the level of individual collagen fibers without biopsy, has made it possible to observe changes in the dermis in vivo, in living skin, without removing tissue, in ways that were previously impossible. This technology has been applied in some recent collagen trials to measure not just the overall ecogenicity of the dermis, but the specific organization and density of collagen fiber networks in individual study participants. The preliminary findings are interesting and, in some cases, more compelling than the coarser measurements used in earlier studies. Whether this translates into effects visible to the person whose skin is being measured remains to be established. Genomics and transcriptomics, the study of which genes are expressed and to what degree in specific tissues, are being applied to skin research in ways that may illuminate the molecular mechanisms by which collagen-derived peptides, if they do have effects, produce those effects. If supplementation with collagen peptides upregulates the expression of collagen synthesis genes in fibroblasts, something that in vitro studies have suggested but human studies have not yet measured directly, this would provide a mechanistic anchor for the clinical findings that the current literature offers without fully explaining. Microbiome research is beginning to examine whether gut bacteria play a role in the processing of collagen peptides, whether specific microbial communities affect the bioavailability of collagen-derived amino acids, and whether probiotic modulation of the gut environment affects the skin outcomes of collagen supplementation. These are genuinely novel research directions. They are also at a stage where the questions are more developed than the answers, and the answers that exist are sufficiently preliminary that any supplement company citing them as support for current products is running considerably ahead of what the evidence supports. The field of nutrigenomics, the study of how individual genetic variation affects the response to nutritional interventions, is relevant to collagen research in a way that has not yet been adequately explored. If the response to collagen supplementation depends on genetic variation in the genes encoding collagen synthesis enzymes, collagen receptors, or the metabolic pathways involved in amino acid processing, then population-level trials will consistently underestimate the effect in individuals who are genetically predisposed to respond and overestimate it in those who are not. Identifying which consumers are likely to benefit would require personalizing the supplementation recommendation in a way that the current market structure does not support and that the regulatory environment does not require. These future directions are being pursued, in some cases by industry-funded researchers, and in some cases by independent academic researchers, who find in the collagen skin question a genuinely interesting biological puzzle. The biological question, whether consuming a specific protein can meaningfully affect the synthesis of that same protein in a specific tissue, is not trivially answered. It touches on fundamental questions about protein turnover, signaling biochemistry, tissue-specific regulation of gene expression, and the relationship between dietary intake and the body's internal allocation of resources. It is a good question. Good questions deserve patient research. The supplement industry has not always been patient, and the consumers who fund the research through their purchases have not always been served by the impatience. But the question is still there, still open, still being worked on in laboratories that are neither funded by nor hostile to the industry. Laboratories where the collagen sits in its centrifuge tube, and the researchers work toward an answer that will be, when it arrives, more useful than anything currently on the label. The research moves at the speed that rigorous research always moves, slowly, carefully, with an awareness of the complexity of the system being studied and the limitations of the methods available for studying it. The market moves at the speed of morning routine videos and subscription boxes and algorithm-optimized social media content. The distance between these two speeds is the distance this story has been tracing from the beginning. When the science and the market eventually converge, if they converge, it will be because the science has produced findings clear enough to require the market's acknowledgement, or because a regulatory change has required the market to wait for the science, or because consumers, better informed than they were, have begun to demand the convergence themselves. That convergence is not here yet, but the research is moving, the laboratories are open, the trials are running, the data is accumulating. And somewhere in the methodology section of a paper that will be published in 3 years, in a paragraph that most readers will skip, the honest answer to the question the canister on your counter implies is slowly, carefully coming into focus. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. It really helps us keep making more content. See you in the next one. Come back to the department store. Come back to 1987 or 1991, or whichever year it was. The lighting is still amber, The carpet is still absorbing every footstep. The woman in the white coat has slid the jar across the glass, and the woman on the other side has picked it up and turned it in her hands and felt the satisfying weight of it. She was not wrong to want something. She was not wrong to look. She was living in a world that had given her limited tools for distinguishing the genuine from the aspirational, the plausible from the proven, the story that science tells from the story that marketing tells in its place. She was living in the world as it was, making the best decisions available to her in the context of the information she had. In 30 years, the tools have improved only slightly. The information is more abundant and no less confusing. The gap between what is known and what is sold has not narrowed. It has simply moved into different formats, been delivered by different voices, and been amplified by distribution systems of a scale that no cosmetics company in 1987 could have imagined. The collagen in your body is doing what it does. The fibroblasts are producing what they produce. The dermis is maintaining its architecture with the resources it has, in the quiet, efficient, largely invisible way that the body maintains all its architecture, without announcement, without before and after photographs, without a label. The thing that the science says with reasonable confidence is this: you can support the body's existing processes by not actively harming them, by wearing sunscreen, by eating adequately, by sleeping well, by not smoking. You can correct deficiencies that exist. You can, possibly, with certain formulations at certain doses over certain periods, nudge certain skin parameters in a measurable direction using hydrolyzed collagen peptides. Whether that nudge is visible to you in a mirror is less certain. Whether it is worth the price is a question only you can answer, with your own priorities and your own relationship with the particular category of hope that lives at cosmetics counters. The narrator is not angry about any of this. The story of what people will buy and what they will believe in the service of how they want to look and feel and age is as old as markets and as old as mirrors, and anger at it is like anger at gravity, accurate in its assessment but not particularly useful in its application. What is useful is simply knowing what the trials found and who funded them, knowing what the label means and what it implies without quite saying, knowing which ingredients have strong independent evidence, and which have manufacturer-funded preliminary evidence, and which have essentially no clinical evidence at all, and are simply riding the coattails of the word collagen. You know these things now, or you knew them an hour ago, and they have settled into whatever part of you stores the things learned at the edge of sleep, not in the organized files of formal knowledge, but in the looser, warmer archive of things encountered gently and absorbed without resistance. The jar sits on the counter. The canister sits on the shelf. The morning light comes through whatever window is nearest to you now, or will come through it eventually, because morning always comes. Let the knowledge sit. Let the counter be clean. Let the complicated truth of $9 billion and preliminary evidence and industry funding and regulatory frameworks and fibroblast signaling hypotheses settle into something simple and quiet and usable. The body knows what it needs. It has been knowing it quietly, reliably, since long before anyone thought to sell it back. Sleep now. The collagen does its slow work without you having to watch. If you liked this video, let me know where in the world you're watching from and what time it is. I'm always curious about that. And if you have a suggested topic, feel free to leave it in the comments.